Ahoy, everyone! My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every miniseries, we chart a course through the full filmography of an underdiscussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we try our best to be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to learning new things about the medium we love so much. Today, we continue our special expedition into the films of Peter Jackson and take a trip to the other side with his 1996 horror comedy, The Frighteners, and see if we are in the mood for a little vivisection. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm in the mood for a little vivisection.
Me too. I want to say this right now. I adored this movie when I was 13, 96. So 13 when it came out, 14 whenever I saw it, around whatever this era was. Adored it. Saw it because it had Michael J. Fox in it. Was obsessed with it. And it was one of those movies where one of those first movies that I saw was like super into, and like nobody else that I knew had seen it. You know, I just saw I saw it like the box in the video store and grabbed it because it says Michael J. Fox on it and watched it and loved it. Right. And it's a movie I've revisited a couple of times, but again, like most of these Jackson movies, not for a very long time. And whenever it's a movie like this, which I loved when I was younger, and I'm watching it again as an adult, I had a little bit of nervousness where I'm like, am I going to watch this? And it's going to be like real disappointing. And all I'm going to be able to say is like, yeah, but I just still like that feeling I had when I was a kid, you know, like that's how I'm going to feel. And I was very happy watching it where I'm like, yeah, some of this is a little creaky and some of this like is like, you can feel like it pushing against the limits of technology at the time and, you know, and budget at the time. But I think the movie still kind of kicks ass, and I was like very happy about that. I don't know what your story is with this movie, history of this movie is, and how you feel about it now.
It's literally everything you just said.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know if I saw it right when it came out in 96. It was probably like 97, but I was pretty young. I really loved it. Revisited it periodically over the years, like when the DVD came out. And yeah, I think it holds up pretty much phenomenally. And having looked at those earlier Jackson movies and really kind of immersing it, like, because The Frighteners, as I've talked about before, was really my window into Peter Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And I did go back and see a lot of his earlier stuff later on because of this movie, because I liked this one so much. I don't know what drew me to it the first time. Not that I was not a Michael J. Fox fan, because I always was. How could you not be?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it was just a time in my life. You know, I was really starting to get into horror in that era. And although this movie is very much a comedy, and, you know, it's a comedy horror film, but I do think it leans a little bit more in the comedy direction.
Yeah, for sure.
It wasn't really promoted that way. I thought it was going to be a horror movie with some laughs, like a Scream type thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking before we started rolling about Scream.
Yeah.
And it was like the perfect time for me to see something like this. And it just, I was big into digital effects back then too. Like I think it was so novel in the 90s, having gone to see Terminator 2 in like 4th grade and being like, whoa, like you can morph characters and stuff like that. So like I was kind of tracking that a little bit. I was always really into visual effects and behind the scenes stuff. And I knew this movie had a ton of that in it. So yeah, kind of hit a lot of sweet spots for me back then. And every time, I've probably revisited it every 5-10 years for a while. It's been a while since I'd seen it, but every time I went back to it, I thought it was exceptionally good. And I think I agree with you 100% on everything that you said. There are some moments where you can kind of see the studio strictures kind of holding things back a little bit. I don't know so much the budget, maybe the technology though. I mean, as good as those effects were back then, we're still in that early era of CGI, but what an interesting movie. What an important movie in what would become of Peter Jackson's career. And I did not realize, I kind of thought this might be the case, but it is the last Michael J. Fox starring movie. I know he did like voices for the Stuart Little movies.
Yeah, he goes into like animation world a little bit after this and then back to TV.
Yeah, he was on Spin City for a long time, which I remember watching. I don't remember anything about that show other than I watched it because
good show.
It was
Bill Lawrence, creator of Scrubs and Ted Lasso and Shrinking. He created Spin City. Bill Lawrence.
Okay.
Yeah. Spin City, good show. Very good show. Michael J. Fox, for me, when you talk about like important, formative movie personalities, maybe number one, possibly, like really. Like wanted to be Michael J. Fox when I was a kid. Made my parents buy me a CD that had Johnny B. Good on it so I could like act out the Back to the Future scene over and over and over again. Thought that him in Back to the Future 2 when he's in the 50s and, Doc is like, wear something inconspicuous. And he shows up with like that fedora and the sunglasses and everything, the leather jacket. I thought he was like the coolest looking person like in the world at that time when I was a kid,
Because he was.
Because he was. And like watched all of those movies, that he did like, like Doc Hollywood.
Sure.
And like that movie where he's like in the mailroom but then pretends to be the rich guy, which I can't remember
the Secret of My Success.
Secret of My Success, exactly.
Sure. Saw those all on cable a long time ago, and don't remember anything about any of them. But yeah, he, really magnetic screen presence. Really, he's like the cool older brother or something.
Yeah.
It's particularly during that time. I watched a lot of Family Ties. I didn't understand it. I didn't like years later, they're like, oh, it's a show about a guy who's like he's a teenage Reagan conservative and his parents were like 60s activist radicals. And as a 6-year-old, I had no context for any of that whatsoever. So I was just like, it's just a show about a family.
You just knew that Michael J. Fox was Alex P. Keaton. That's what you knew.
I thought he was awesome. Yeah.
Much like Summer Girls would enshrine much later on by LFO later on.
R.I.P. I think 2 of those 3 guys have passed away.
Really?
Then. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The late funky ones.
You remember what it stands for, too.
Oh, I do. Chanya Sud makes me sick. For all the young folk, go listen to that song. There used to be a day where one random ass song would be the biggest song in the world, and you would never really know anything about the people who made it or who they were. They would be in one music video, and they would be the most famous people for people between the ages of 12 and 17 for 3 months, and then you would never hear of them again.
They burned brightly, but they did not burn long. Yep.
Yeah, and that song would stick in your head forever. Yep. So
because most people know it as the Abercrombie and Fitch song. Which
absolutely.
Did a lot of shopping there back in the day, and
yeah, absolutely. So like I said, obsessed with Michael J. Fox, and I've been watching the Back to the Future movies with my family, with my son and my wife, who have never seen them. So we watched the first one, obviously, and they were in love with it. And we just watched the second one, which as a kid was always my favorite because so much was happening all of the time and it was weird.
Well, and that one came out when we could actually see it. Like I saw that one in a theater. I actually think I saw that one first.
Oh, because it's possible. No, I definitely saw the first one first because my parents really liked that movie. So I definitely saw that one first. I think I definitely didn't see the second one in the theater. I definitely saw them all after they had come out in home video or whatever, I believe. But I was like, and I remember my mom and dad being like, yeah, the second one, obviously it's not as good. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I said the same thing.
It's another movie that has the guy I like in it, the 2 people I like in it, and the cool car.
Also, no hoverboard in the first movie, so it's got that going for it.
Hoverboard don't work on water unless you've got power. But we're watching the movie, and my son loved it. And my wife also liked it a lot too. She was like, this is not as good as the first one, but I really enjoyed it. But my son, of course, he was like, this is my favorite. And of course it is. And that movie has its problems, issues, whatever, it's a little clunky in spots. But I think the 50s section is so dynamite because it's so fun and so energetic and so cool to see like the different things going on, like the sort of like different timelines or different versions interacting. But the one thing you just come away with, and I said to my wife and she agreed with me, is like there's just moments where Michael J. Fox is reacting to himself from 5 years ago. He's obviously not seeing anything, right? He's just like looking and reacting to nothing. And it's just, you buy it. It's funny. It's charming. It's engaging. And I'm just like, he's just good at this. Like, he's just good at doing this type of stuff, which I think directly leads into being into this movie where he's constantly acting against nothing, constantly. But he's just one of those guys. And I think, the fact that he was like cool, but also little and kind of nervy and kind of like a little bit, dorky even at times, and had this weird manic sort of energy to him. I think he really fits into that like 80s, early 90s, like movie star mode, like the Michael Keaton type of thing, right? Where it's like, this guy was like the biggest movie star in the world for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. And I know it doesn't make sense to you now, but like, everyone loved these people. And I love, I think when we grew up, like those type of movie stars are definitely like entrenched in our brains. Right. And I think I definitely saw this because it was Fox, and I think he's really good in this movie. And I think, again, he's asked to do a lot of crazy stuff where there's nothing to play off of. But I was just really happy watching the movie. Like and it just also went by so fast. It was like I paused it to get like up and get a drink of water, and I was like, oh my god, there's only 30 minutes left. You know, it just one of those movies that I think really moves as well, which was fun.
I agree. Although we both watched the director's cut,
It did.
discussed that beforehand,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure. Like now, I like this movie so much, I almost want to look at the theatrical and just kind of compare the two. I think the director's cut's a little bit much. I
Mhm.
think there were some places where not so much. I mean, we've done that with the other Jackson films as well,
Yeah.
the ones where
Mhm.
where we had access to the director's cut, Heavenly Creatures and Dead Alive. This one, I could sort of feel the places where, not my studio head brain, because, if I had a studio head brain, I would be running a studio. But, there are moments where I can kind of, particularly like we were talking about the DVD era, right? Like when you could
Yeah.
see all these deleted scenes. And for a long time, it was a really fun exercise for me to like think about, okay, why did they cut this? And why was it a good idea that they didn't leave this in the movie?
Mhm.
It's a good exercise in terms of, just analyzing film storytelling and what works and what doesn't and things like that. And there were definitely moments in this director's cut where I was like, man, if we could just tighten this up a little bit here. And I think
Yeah.
I want to kind of compare the two because I didn't, you can look at sort of what scenes, what specific moments are cut out,
Yeah.
left in, and compare the two. And I almost want to do that because I agree with you. The pacing of this is insane.
Yeah.
I would say like the director's cut runs like 2 hours and 2 minutes. And after about minute 50 or so, like just before the halfway point, this movie's just bat out of hell right to the
Yeah.
end. I was like, most movies like, okay, we're getting into the third act here and
Yeah.
then we're done. Like, and then this one, I was at that point and I was like, how could there be that much more of this? And usually that's like, oh, no, how
Yeah.
could there be that much more of this? With this one, I was like, cool, there's that much more
Yeah.
of this. I get another hour of this movie. So yeah, we'll have to talk a little bit about the pacing and that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff. as
So
well.
I told you before we started recording, I watched this movie twice. I watched the theatrical cut just normally. Like I watched it like, like sitting down to watch it for the movie. And then I watched the director's cut with Peter Jackson's commentary on it. And he explicitly calls out, he'll go like, this scene wasn't in the theatrical cut and here's the reason why. And sometimes it's like, he says like, this wasn't a thing the studio made me do. I just thought this shouldn't be in the movie anymore. Or like, this scene, there's a moment with Dammers later on where he has like a swastika on his hand.
Mhm.
And it's meant to say that he was like with the Manson family or whatever, but Jackson's like the test audiences didn't understand that, and they're kind of all their feedback was like, we were really like
Why
into
is
this
that guy a Nazi?
character, and then all of a sudden he's a Nazi, and then he goes like, okay, like that's not our intention, but obviously like we're not communicating it the right way, so we're gonna remove it from they had to digitally remove it from his hand, because there's a couple times in that scene where you would see it, and so they had to take it out, but. It's interesting. It was interesting to listen to the director's commentary. And again, like I said, it's from the DVD era. And so like about 10 years after this movie comes out, they released this 10-year anniversary cut of the movie. Now this movie comes out, we go talk about this as we go through, but it's not a success, right? It costs about $30 million to make. It doesn't really even make that money back. There's a lot of reasons why that happens, but it gains like a cult following years after that. Obviously Jackson becomes one of the biggest directors in the world. And from about the year, like 2000 to the year like 2010, there was like this, or maybe a little later than that, but there's this crazy rush when DVD came out where studios and production companies were putting a lot of time and money and investment in making special features for their movies and like creating like interesting packaging for their movies and like making all these special editions and all of this stuff because it was a huge market, right? It was bigger sometimes than the box office market, right? The DVD sale market.
And this movie's like the poster child for that, right? Like it comes out during a time, it was like 2001, 2002.
Mhm.
It's the director's cut. It has amazing packaging. It's got like the,
Yeah.
the Grim Reaper kind of coming through the wall.
Yeah.
It's like a 3D.
Like a lenticular cover. Yeah.
Yeah,
right,
kind of like that. 4 hours of special features released at a time when like everybody's got Peter Jackson fever and everyone's
Yeah.
like waiting for like whatever the next Lord of the Rings. That maybe there was one out, maybe there was two out at
Well,
that
this came out in
point.
2006, I believe, right? This DVD, right? The 10-year
Did it?
anniversary. The 10-year anniversary.
Oh, okay. So like
DVD came
right
out.
around the
Like I think that the Fellowship had just come out. Not Fellowship. Return of the King had like I think just come out when this thing was coming. Basically, it was like a year or two earlier. So
well, anyway, so I'm
Yeah,
completely wrong. But the point I was going to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
is like those DVD releases around that time, and it was, you know, a limited time in film history, but like
Yeah.
those releases were as big as a box office release
Yeah.
almost, right? Like you would see this movie that was kind of a forgotten about movie in the mid 2000s, and now here it is on every shelf in Best Buy, and it's like it's from this director that everybody cares about now, and like people are kind of buying it sight unseen, right? Because those movies come out not to be rented, because you could do that back then too,
Yeah.
but just to own this movie, you know, this piece of Peter Jackson history with a bunch of him and his personality and his commentary and stuff like that on it. And that's something I kind of miss, something that, that we've definitely lost in the past, you know, 15 years or so. But it was very cool. I mean, also, you and I think we're in a perfect time in our lives, right?
Yeah.
My first job out of college, you know, making not good money, certainly, especially by today's standards, but enough money to have disposable income to buy a shit ton of DVDs. And so when something like this came out, it's like, oh my God, The Frighteners. That's a movie that I really liked back in the day. Haven't seen since then. Gonna buy that now. Gotta own that. That's gotta be part of my collection. And I'm glad it was. I did not get to revisit that DVD. I just found it today. But I'm happy I own it. I'm gonna go back and look at all that stuff. And yeah, it's what a sadly missed era that was. Because there was, I mean, particularly for somebody who's interested in filmmaking from that behind the scenes sort of standpoint, right? The commentaries, the wonderful behind the scenes features, filmmakers like Jackson. And as you were saying, right, like he was kind of way ahead of the curve on this.
He
but,
was.
But during this period, I mean, you know, the movie Stealth, right, which is a terrible fucking movie that's got like a very elaborate DVD with Rob Cohen talking about how amazing, you know, his special effects work and things were on there. So like, if you wanted to learn about how studio movies were made, or like Robert Rodriguez is re-releasing all his stuff, he does the 10-minute film school things. I mean, it's just a wonderful time to be this kind of person and to really have a lot of that content to look at. Like I would love, you know, like you don't see that from like Jane Schoenbrunn or somebody, you know, like a very modern, a 2025 era filmmaker who's making these kind of cult movies, which I still haven't seen. I saw the TV Globe.
I know
I'm going to see it. I think I'm going to really like it. But, you know, or what's David Robert Mitchell or one of those kind of people. I would love to hear their director commentaries. And like, I mean, as far as I know, those don't exist, right?
I mean, A24 puts out pretty nice discs for their movies. And I don't know which ones have commentaries and what ones don't. But it's not a thing anymore, right? It used to be just part of the deal, right? These people would in their contracts would have to sit down and record a commentary for the movie that they just didn't. Sometimes you had the actors on there. You know, we lived through the whole era of like, you know, American Pie, you know, super unrated pie fucker edition, you know, or whatever, and you know, and all that kind of stuff. And there was good and bad to all of this, right? But I think that like it was really an arms race, right?
Sorry, I really liked that.
Thank you. Really an arms race for these studios because, you know, how many discs you had, what the packaging looked like, all the stuff really mattered to the people going and buying these discs. So they would really put a lot of effort into them. And the thing I think, which I think is the most sad about this, is that I think that appetite and that hunger from people who like movies is still there, if not even more there than it used to be. Like, you know, you can see for something like Letterboxd how much there is this huge group of people who are really interested in movies and talking about movies and the way movies are made and all of this stuff. You can see the popularity of video essays on YouTube, the popularity of like, you know, watch along content, all of this stuff, I think shows a hunger still for this type of material, extra material about the movies and TV shows and everything that they like, right? And I think that,
but we're not getting the other side of it, right? Like we're not getting the filmmakers' perspectives, the actors' perspectives.
Well, that's what I mean. But that's what I mean. I think people still have that, but they still have that hunger. So I think if they were provided that, that's why all of these podcasts that are like, oh, these three people who were on The Office do a watch along podcast where they talk about behind the scenes stories.
Yeah,
people love that stuff. People listen to the Succession podcast. People, you know, in this era also, I mean, it lasted longer because the show was so popular. This is the era when they had a show where people talked about The Walking Dead after The Walking Dead was on. You know what I mean? Like, so there is a thing with that where I think people still want it, and we'll talk about this more because, you know, we're about to get into Lord of the Rings movies in the next couple of shows, right? And like those discs are like probably the top creme de la creme, right, of this era of like just like they are like 4 discs. They have like the special features are longer than the movies, which are already super long. It's like one of these things where it's like there's like 4 directors, there's like 4 commentaries on every movie. It's like there's all of this stuff, right? And like I said, Jackson, who hired a film crew to produce and to shoot a behind the scenes documentary of this movie. DVD didn't exist when this movie was being shot, but he loved Laserdisc, and he was like, those things have special features on them. I want my movie to have special features, and I don't want it to be done by an outside company. I don't want it to be done by the studio. I want us to shoot it, and he says on like the commentary that he spent like weeks after the movie was wrapped and locked editing the special feature stuff, to make the documentary, basically.
He did that himself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he had like an editor with him and stuff like that. But
like usually the filmmaker has no part.
Yeah,
in
no,
that,
he was like, no, it's like something
just
he's
the fact
doing.
that he was hands on at all with it. Wow.
Yeah, he's talking about like logging dailies, like in the commentary, So it's like just very interesting. So
I like this Peter Jackson guy.
Good guy.
I like the cut
and
of
it's so
jib.
funny when you watch the documentary, and we'll tie into kind of talking about the backstory about this movie, which I think is very interesting, which is that the story for this movie is conceived before they do Heavenly Creatures, right? It's like after they do Brain Dead, Dead Alive. And he's like, I have this idea with it. Him and Fran Walsh had an idea for this movie, and it was very different, but it was the core idea was like a kind of like con man ghost, hunter dude or whatever, right?
Which is a very fun thing, because we talked last time about how they did all this research for Heavenly Creatures, right? Like this is right around the same time. So like while they are exploring this like really heavy actual thing that happened in New Zealand, this murder that they were making a movie about, on the side, they're developing this very, very silly, goofy, Ghostbusters-esque thing that they were going to do, conceivably after that. I really like that too.
Yeah,
because it is the tonal shift, right? Like from Dead Alive to Heavenly Creatures, and then Heavenly Creatures back to this. Like this is, and I thought it from like the opening scene, this is the true follow up to Dead Alive, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like this is the movie that you can absolutely see that it's tamer in a lot of ways. It's definitely geared toward a more mainstream audience and toward a bigger audience than a Dead Alive, but you can see very, very clearly this is the same guy who made that, and not so much, although there are some Heavenly Creatures esque things here as well,
for sure. And he said like, part of the idea came from the fact they were writing this story about these 2 real like teenage like killers, and they kind of wanted to write this kind of as just like a like, let's just take it to the extreme, like other end where it's not serious. It's, it's it's as over the top as it can possibly be. Right. And that's what they kind of started with. And they sent this to their agent, who then sent it, basically was like, sent it to Zemeckis. And Zemeckis was like, I like this. I am looking, kind of read it because he was looking for pitches for like Tales from the Crypt spinoffs, because he was producing Tales from the Crypt, the new Tales from the Crypt, and was like, wanted to make feature films, out of it. And whether or not, he claims in the documentary that he never really thought about directing it himself. There are other people that say that he did plan on directing it, but very quickly was like, I do want to produce this. And then, and basically was like, Jackson was like, well, we're about to go start shooting, so we're not going to be able to like even like look at this for a year, basically. And apparently Zemeckis was like, that's okay. I'm going to go off and shoot this other movie anyway, which was Forrest Gump, and then we can reconvene afterwards, right? And we can figure it out from there. So they kind of shelve it for a year, and then come back to it a year later, and basically Zemeckis decides to produce it, and they get like kind of the green light to start writing the script fully. And never in any of these behind the scenes documentaries did they mention other directors. I mean, I know you found this like IMDb trivia or whatever that was like Sam Raimi and Tim Burton were considered to direct it. I don't know if that's ever true. It seemed like
when you watch them corroborate talk about that anywhere.
Yeah,
but
when you watch them talk about it, it just seems like it was always going to be, it was either going to be Zemeckis doing it or it was going to be Jackson, because it really does feel like when you listen to them talk about it and when you read about stuff about it, that Zemeckis really was like, I'm bringing this guy to Hollywood, not literally, but I'm bringing like him to the American film industry, and I'm going to protect him, right? We're going to make this movie. Zemeckis, obviously, at this point, there is not any more, there are very few other as profitable directors who have ever lived than him at this point. He's made the Back to the Future movies. He's made Forrest Gump. There's not really much he can't do at this point, right? He can do whatever he wants at this point. And, basically they write the script, and then they start sending it around to people. And initially, Jackson was more thinking like it's going to be all like unknown actors, basically, right? It's going to be all like, or like, sort of like genre people. And Zemeckis was like, I want to send it to Michael, and it's really funny in the documentary, Michael J. Fox, he goes, I read the script. He goes, Bob wanted me to read the script. He's like, I wasn't really interested in doing anything at this point. Now, he probably, if you look at the timeline, he finds out that he has Parkinson's, I think, a year before he reads this script, I think. Like, so he's already knows that he has Parkinson's disease at this point. I don't think he's revealed it publicly yet, but he knows already. Because I believe 94 was when he finds out, I believe. This movie shoots in 96. Or it comes out in 96, shoots in 95. He says he was like, I don't know, wasn't interested in doing anything. I didn't want to do anything, but I was like, I'll read it for Bob. And he goes, I read it, and he was like, it was unlike anything anyone ever sent me. Like, no one ever wanted me to do movies like this. And also, I read it, and I never read anything like it. He goes, it seemed like it was from the mind, someone, I got to read this. I wrote down the quote because it was really funny. The work of degenerately ill person is what he said. And he goes like, Bob, I don't know what you want me to do about this. Like, it's fascinating, but I don't know. I don't think I could do this. And Zemeckis said, look, they're showing Heavenly Creatures, his current movie, at the Toronto Film Festival. Why don't you go meet with Peter, go see the movie, and then if you still want to do it, don't do it. And Michael J. Fox lives in Vermont. And so he talks about this in the documentary, and he says like, it was a very short, like, little plane ride for me to go to Toronto. I went there, I met with Peter, and he's like, it's so funny. He's very forthcoming in this documentary. He's very like comfortable. He's very just like, I'm going to say that, talk like it is. And he goes, it's kind of a weird position to be put in because it's like, I came here, I'm going to talk to the director. He's like, I talked to him. I loved him. He was such a nice guy. He's like, we clicked really instantly. And I was like, but now I got to go see his movie. And then I got to go tell him, I don't want to do your movie. Like, that's like, it's really uncomfortable. Like, it's a really weird thing to have to do. And he goes, I went to see Heavenly Creatures. He goes, 10 minutes into it, he goes, I went to Peter and I said, I'll do anything you want. That's what he said. That's basically what he said. He's like, 10 minutes, and I was like, I knew that I needed to do this. I need to work with this guy, basically.
Well, it was the same thing for Danny Elfman, right? I mean, another perfect choice for that. I mean, I think there's some really, really great choices that this movie, it's as good as it is, I think it would have really suffered without the Danny Elfman score. It definitely would have suffered without Michael J. Fox in the lead. I think some of the supporting roles, John Astin is so great in this. Jeffrey Combs, I can't wait to talk about Jeffrey Combs in this movie. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that was, Peter Griffin. Whoa. Peter Jackson has a track record at this point. And, has proven that he can do the madcap crazy, indie gore splatter stuff, but also, like with Heavenly Creatures, is proving to these people who know something, right? I mean, Michael J. Fox has been in a lot of movies at this point, has been around some brilliant filmmakers like Robert Zemeckis, so he knows, what those skills look like and how to sort of pick that out. And yeah, I think Heavenly Creatures, although it's so different from this movie, really just inspires a lot of people, gets a lot of people on the Peter Jackson train, and it's like, yeah, I want to work with this guy. Like, this is the future of Hollywood, and I want to get on board with that. And they all turned out to be right. Maybe not with this movie, because this movie was not particularly well regarded, but the seeds of that are definitely there.
It's funny because several people in the documentary say this, like, Shy McBride. I got to say his name correctly. His name is pronounced Shy. I always said Che McBride.
I always called him Chai. Yeah.
Yeah, Shy McBride. Everyone says it in the documentary.
Another great choice here, by the way.
Apparently, he was one of the people. It's so interesting throughout the whole commentary and throughout the documentary. The one thing you really get across from Jackson is that him and Walsh were really open the whole time to being like, how can the people we're working with make what we're trying to make better, right? We're not going to sit here and say, like, this is our vision, this is our script, it's not going to change. They talked about several times about Fox coming in with ideas and things and them being like, and them doing them. And they were trying to cast these two ghosts, and they were like, look, Jackson says, he's like, Fran and I's strength is not writing like verbal stand-up comedy. Like, that is not our strength. So we wrote it being like, with the intention of being like, we're going to cast two funny people to play these two ghosts, and they will make it better. Like, we'll tell them, you guys can make this whatever you want it to be. We just want it to be funny. And, and Chai McBride said, like, I didn't want to do it at first because I read the script and I was like, this is very stereotypical. Like, it's not very funny. And eventually I said I'd do it if they just let me do whatever I wanted. And they agreed to it, basically.
Well, right, and I think that's where you get, his character does like this kind of Richard Pryor thing almost.
Yeah.
Like there's this like
Yeah.
subtle undercurrent of like racial humor.
Yeah.
The Grim Reaper outfit, and it's like we
Mm.
should wear white sheets. Like, no, we're not doing a white
Yeah.
sheet like that
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely tell that a lot of personalities that were kind of pre-existing. Combs another perfect example of that, right?
Yes.
Where they kind of bring that energy and that persona to this movie, and it does. I think it elevates the movie a lot. And of course, Michael J. Fox, right? Like
Yeah.
he's, this character is a little Marty McFly. Like it
Mhm.
is, however he was written on the page, he feels very much like a Michael J. Fox character, a Michael J. Fox creation. I
Yeah.
did read, and again, I can't corroborate any of this
Mhm.
stuff. He was always the first choice. If he did turn it down, they were talking about like Tom Cruise and like
Mhm.
these more sort of conventional, less comedically oriented kind of actors. And I don't think that would have worked at all. I think this is very much a Michael J. Fox movie. And
Yeah.
you, young Bobby, seeing this as a Michael J. Fox movie, I'm sure you were happy with what you
Very
got out of it.
happy. But being like looking at it now and trying to be like diagnose like why it works. It's like part of it is, and Jason Segel has talked about this when he's doing Shrinking, where he's like, where they're like, we're kind of worried about you being likable or whatever, and he's like, make me as unlikable as you want. He's like, I've got all of this nice guy cachet that I built in my career to burn. People are not going to look at me and go like, I hate this guy. They're going to go, oh, what's wrong with this nice guy? Like, because of all the stuff I had done. And that's what Fox brings to this, right? In so many ways, where like he's a con man,
Yeah, his character is a total huckster.
Yeah.
For a lot of the movie, we think he's maybe his past life. He's an architect. He was
Yeah.
kind of a bad husband, a dismissive, guy that was not particularly good in his marriage. But
Mhm.
he's Michael J. Fox. He
Mhm.
cannot not be likable.
Exactly.
So I do think you could see this movie cast with like a like a Benicio del Toro as the Frank Bannister character. This kind of oilier,
Yeah.
sleazier. This guy is just, he can see the dead and he's just ripping people off with that.
Mhm.
When it's Michael J. Fox, like there's an earnestness to him
Yes,
also
exactly.
that I
Yes.
really like in this. And yeah, it's really brilliant casting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that makes the movie, right? Because the character becomes better and more interesting because you've got these kind of competing vibes going on with what the character's personal life is like in the movie and what the actor's personality brings to the movie, which I think
And
is
there's an
fascinating.
emotional core to this movie that
Yeah.
like it doesn't need, it just makes it better, right?
Yeah.
Like this would be a fun time even if it was something more like Ghostbusters where it's just lots of special effects, lots of action, lots of jokes, but you're not really emotional. I don't know, I'm right about that, right? I love that movie to pieces, but
Oh yeah, there's nothing. No, there's absolutely no emotion in Ghostbusters at all.
Right, but like this movie does have there's some moments in this that I found really really affecting that I kind of remembered a little bit about, but maybe now that I'm older just kind of hit a lot harder. And I think he's the perfect person to do that kind of stuff, whereas a more purely comedic, a broader performer like a Benicio del Toro in that role, or somebody who's a little more stone-faced like a Tom Cruise in that role, I think also wouldn't be able to do that.
No, too intense.
Yeah. Well, there's this affability. Like he fails
Yeah.
a lot in this movie. He kind of sucks at a lot of things, and it's not in a way that makes him seem incompetent. It's just in a way, you sort of you sympathize with it.
Absolutely, 100%. You need somebody like this in this lead role to do this. What I think is fascinating about this too, right, is that they shot it all in New Zealand. Like it's just this thing, like where already Jackson has never done a movie that costs more than like whatever $5 million and or whatever, and he's never made a movie like with like a big studio before, and he's like, I want to shoot this movie in New Zealand, and I want you to move. I want to bring everybody here, and I want to shoot everything here. And he convinced them to do it. And this is one of those things where directors who have the thing are able to do stuff like this, which is to say, like, no. You don't convince people that their concept and their idea is the right idea, right? And part of it, he just says, like, I didn't want to go spend 6 months in Los Angeles. Like that's part of just what it was, But I think it's also part of it. It's just like he really believes in the place that he's from, and he wanted to make it something that mattered in like the international sort of film business, And he wasn't gonna. He got a chance to do it, and he wasn't gonna not, do it basically.
Well, just also aesthetically and thematically, right? Shooting
Mm,
this in New Zealand. I mean, they did. There's some special effects work. They built models, American style houses. I
yeah,
mean, they made some effort. That's what the studio said. Like, yeah, you can
yeah.
shoot this in Wellington or whatever, Christchurch, in New Zealand.
Littleton, they shot Littleton and Wellington are the two places they shot it in.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
what they said was you just have to make it look like America. He
yeah,
never does. Even seeing this as a kid, when it came out, I was like, this doesn't look like any place that I've ever really seen. Not that I'm super well traveled in this
yeah,
country or around the world, but there is something about it that I think actually works for the movie really well. It's a little bit, odd, quirky, different. I mean,
yeah,
they kind of, play at this being an American small town. It definitely doesn't look or feel like that. The cars, the people, there's a lot of accents in this movie, things like that.
mm,
But it does, I think it actually works for the kind of heightened sensibility that this movie has, whereas just shooting this in wherever they do small town horror movies,
yeah,
that generic movie small town that they seem to shoot everything in, this doesn't really feel like that. The just the elevation, you got those beautiful landscape
yeah.
shots, and I can't really think of anywhere that looks like that
So I mean,
here.
the thing he tried, the thing he like sold it as to the studio was like it kind of like it could be like a Northern California like coastal town. Like that is kind of how he pitched it, right? And like yeah, like, I don't think it looks necessarily like an American small town, but also it's not identifiable as New Zealand or anything like that either. So it gives it that sort of like it just feels like a little bit weird, like a little bit
It's
off.
like a storybook fairy tale sort of,
Yeah, exactly.
disconnected from reality sort of place, which I like a lot.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It does change the calculus a little bit. Like he talked about this a lot in the commentary and stuff about like who you hire like to do things, and this is where like the budget comes in. He's like we had we couldn't cast every part with American actors because we couldn't afford to bring to board and bring over all these actors for these little parts. So he talked about casting a lot of New Zealand actors for certain parts and stuff like that. It's one of the reasons why the head of the newspaper is British, because he was like, New Zealand people aren't very good at doing American accents. He's like, so, but they can do British accents totally fine. So we just were like, oh, she's like, she's like the snooty newspaper lady. So like, he thought we can get away with it for it being, British. But he shot in the little town of Littleton, and then there's like,
And a lot of his crew, his Heavenly
yes,
Creatures crew is working on it. So you get Alan Bollinger, who is the cinematographer, who unfortunately, so you get 2 credits for
yeah, which is
DP
always
at the beginning
it's
of this
weird.
movie.
You never see that.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
in this case is nothing nefarious. He
no,
got into a car accident, just physically couldn't finish
mm-hmm.
the shoot by himself. So they brought on another guy to help him out. But he's got him there. He's got Jamie Selkirk, who's been his editor for a while now,
Yeah,
edited Dead Live and Heavenly Creatures. So yeah, it's a very New Zealand production, very Peter Jackson wingnut production,
mm-hmm.
even though it is ostensibly an American studio film. And
Yeah,
the studio saw this, was very impressed with it. It was supposed to be a Halloween release, like, mid-budget horror movie,
mm-hmm.
dropped out in October. They liked it so much, and because it was so effects heavy, they thought this could compete in the Hollywood blockbuster summer season. Putting this up against Independence Day was insane of
Yeah.
them.
Classic studio not knowing what they're doing. It's just one of those classic things where it's like you release spooky movies in October, like, or in the fall. Like that's when you release them. That's when they have the best chance. It was all supposed to be PG-13, and they got an R for like a lot of like kind of stupid reasons. And it's so funny because in the documentary, Danny Elfman, who is a cranky guy on the best of days, is just like going off on the ratings board. Basically, he's like, they have all these stupid things. Some of it was like when she shoots the shotgun through the door, like seeing holes
Too many
blown in
holes in the
doors like
door.
that
Yeah.
is like, what a crazy reason to give something an R rating. And like some of like
Whereas, see, I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, this kind of centers on a really horrific mass shooting. I mean, it's
yeah,
like there is,
but they
it's
don't show
heightened.
anything in the mass shooting. That's the thing.
They don't, but just, implication wise, even then, I feel like that's a bridge too far, maybe.
Well, then probably yes, but I'm just saying like they really constructed the movie, and Jackson talks about this. He like constructed the movie and shot the movie to most of it to be, most of the violence and all the other stuff to be sort of like implied. He's like, and then we got an R rating anyway, and
So let's blow Jeffrey Combs' head
that's
off.
one thing they added
Yeah.
after the fact was Jeffrey Combs' character's head getting blown off,
Which is one of the, I think, best moments. I mean, one of the most
it's a
memorable.
great moment.
Yeah,
his head
like,
is the ghost head is there after his real head
Yep.
is blown up. It's so good. But he goes like, and I don't remember if it was him or his elephant or something. That goes like, and like Peter was pissed because like Peter was like, if I knew I was getting an R rating, I would have made this an R-rated movie. Like, I know how to make an R-rated movie. Like that's basically what it was. And he goes like, so the combination of this not being PG-13, of this being an R-rated movie, and then deciding to move it up to the summer, he's like, was basically like the death knell for the movie, basically.
Also, opening day, I believe, of the '96 Olympics in Atlanta.
It's crazy. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, this comes out in the fall and even if it's R-rated, but if it is PG-13, it makes much more of an impact, right? I mean, it's not probably not a runaway blockbuster hit, but it will make an impact, right? And in the summer, it's just an afterthought, right? At that point. But the movie takes a long time to shoot. It takes like 6 months to shoot the movie. Basically they have to shoot everything twice. Anything with the ghost in it, they have to shoot twice, because basically what they're doing is they're shooting the scenes like with the living characters, and then having to shoot the scenes again on a blue screen with the ghost characters, and having to superimpose them into the real shots. And one thing that Fox said was that, like, even when the two actors are playing the ghost, or even the John Aston, even when they weren't there, they weren't in the shots, they would show up to set and like give me the dialogue, and I could bounce off with them even if they weren't there. He goes, which was really great, because they were showing up to all these days of work where they weren't even going to be on camera. They didn't have to do it. I mean, Fox said it's really one of the best filming experience of his life, is what he said, was doing this movie. And
I think that stuff holds up exceptionally well.
It does.
Too.
It's really good compositing.
From a visual standpoint, the compositing is great.
Mm-hmm.
The it's a lot of back and forth, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of banter between the living characters and the dead characters, and it's got this like screwball comedy kind of energy that must have been very, very hard to pull off without the actor actually physically being there.
Yeah.
And it works so much better in this than thing. I mean, we've like, now you and I could do this with a couple of plugins.
My God.
We can get for free, after record the show. But like, this is, I don't think anybody would be able to sort of get the timing down, and just the way this is all sort of matched up and edited really nicely. And, it does not feel, I mean, there's definitely some aging, some datedness to some of the special effects here, but that stuff I think looks better than anything. We've seen so many movies that do similar things to this.
Well, now they'd be all CG. Now the ghosts would just be CG. They wouldn't even be people, really. So that.
But I think that compositing, I think shooting on film, shooting on blue screen, everything like that, it makes it look more ghostly somehow.
It does.
It makes it look
sure.
more like, I don't believe in ghosts, but I think if they existed, they'd look kind of like this.
Yeah, it does. It gives that, and I like. I think, talking about the effects in general, it's one of the most, at this time, one of the most ambitious movies, if not the most ambitious movie effects wise ever made, with the most like just raw effects shots that were going to be in this. And
I loved Heavenly Creatures. They were making a big deal. That was notable for its CGI effects. There were 30 CGIs, 30 digital effect shots. Literally before the opening credits finish rolling, we've already blown that out of the water. It's probably 100, right there.
I mean, the Reaper character, before he's unmasked, is a fully CG thing that's in the movie, right? It's that's at this time, 1996, like, not something that occurs, right, in movies at all. And I think that most of it done, right, almost all of it done by Weta Digital at the time, like a big 18 months to complete the effects. They brought
bring
on
in a guy from ILM,
Wes Takahashi, who's a legend in visual effects, even at that point,
just
but
to
even
kind
more
of,
so now.
Not even to do the work, but just to manage the project, because they did, they wrote all this stuff, they wanted to get all of it done, and it ended up being a lot more. They kind of bit off more than they could chew. They employed another company, Pixel Perfect or something like that, and then a lot of those people actually joined as Weta expanded, just became part of that empire. I wanted to say, though, just before I forget, and you can see it a lot in that opening scene, as much CGI as there is in this movie, this was, I think, right in that sort of post-Jurassic Park period where CGI was not the be-all and end-all, and that was always meant to be something that was going to sort of mix with the practical effects. And you can see it right in that opening scene where this Grim Reaper character, it's in the walls, it's like bending the walls and altering the physicality, the structure of the place. And so there's always something, a refrigerator tips over or something, like there's practical effects that are matched up to the CGI. So it always kind of has this tangible, physical, like, obviously those, things falling onto the floor, that's all real. And I think it just makes that feel so much more weighty and, as I said, tangible. And this is something that we've lost so badly. I mean, people complain so much about CGI now, And it's not because the CGI doesn't look good, but it's because there's just no real stuff.
There's something real
there,
on the
right?
screen anymore. That's the problem. And I think you've started to see a little bit now, like a sort of retreat from that a little bit. You know, I think that people have definitely made their feelings known about this, where it's like, we've gone too far. Like, you know, and I think you can see even things like, you know, the Thunderbolts, the latest Marvel movie, they made a big deal about being like, we shot most of this. Whenever we could shoot anything practically, we shot it practically. And we committed to locations and areas that we actually were going to shoot in. We weren't shooting everything on a green screen where we could like put in the background, you know, the famous shot from like the famous like behind the scenes thing from like the Black Widow movie, where like literally it's just like a cafe table in the middle of a green screen. Right. And they just chose where it was going to be afterwards. You know, it's like, you're absolutely right. It's a mix of this stuff. And like, you know, obviously, much like I'd say like, you know, or Spielberg or even the Wachowskis, I'll bring them into this conversation as well. Jackson's pushing the limits of what can be done at this time with the technology that exists and the tools at his disposal, right? And he'll even say this in the commentary, he'll be like, this didn't really work. You know, like we were trying, and he'll talk a lot about like, we had so much other stuff we wanted to do with this sequence or this sequence, and we just couldn't do it. He's like,
there's entire characters that were cut out of this just because they couldn't get the effects to look right.
He said like the judge who was like leaves the movie halfway through, he's like, we shot so much more stuff with John Astin. There are all these other scenes that we were going to do, and like we didn't have the money or the time to finish the effects for that stuff. Because also, like you mentioned, studio pushes the movie up 4 months. So like the movie's not done when it gets pushed up 4 months.
Yeah, they give him more money. Here's $6 million for special effects, but oh, by the way, you've got 4 less months to work on it. Like,
exactly.
That's not a great bargain.
Still a thing that happens now to people, right? Where they don't have enough time to. It's the story of like effects houses, right? VFX houses, but.
Yeah, this is an early example of that. I really wanted more of the Bloodhound, by the way, the judge's dog that we see.
I know. Yeah, it was very
like
cool.
One scene early on. Yeah, it's a great design, really cool, fun idea, and I love dogs and the John Astin character too. I mean, it's a shame he leaves the movie as early as he does because he's really great.
And John Astin, like, obviously father of Sean Astin, who we'll be talking about for many many episodes coming up.
Yeah, this is if not for this movie, Sean Astin does not play a Hobbit later on.
Yeah, absolutely. John Astin, obviously the original Gomez Adams in the Addams Family.
Was this his last movie? I don't know,
but I think it's around the time where
close.
He dies not too long after this, I believe.
Good one to go out on.
Yeah, he's really good in this, and you know, one of the things they talk about in the auditions is like it was really tough because we didn't. Rick Baker, by the way, there's a physical prosthetic that's on his face that they're then, you know, doing all these effects things too, but it's a physical transformation he's going through that's being photographed. And Rick Baker designed this obviously legendary makeup and effects.
What a great character design too. He's missing his midsection. He's just like a torso and a spine and a lower half.
And
really
his
great.
Jaws falling off.
Yeah.
And he talks about like Jackson talked about, we knew that basically his whole face was going to be covered and it was just going to be his eyes. But we didn't have the effects stuff done because you do that when you have the actor because you make it to his face. Because we had to audition people, you know, like, you know, without it, and we just had to kind of like just try to hope that whoever we cast would push through. And he goes, once we saw John's audition, they have a John Astin's audition tape in the documentary. Like we knew because his eyes were just so big and expressive. We were like, we got it, you know. But it's one of those funny things where you don't feel like, you would think in my head, right? Almost like Jeffrey Combs, who obviously didn't have to audition for this part. I don't, probably, you know, whatever. You would think like, oh, they probably John Astin was probably just one of those people. They were like, let's just get John to come in and do it. But he had to audition. He had to do a tape, you know, and it's just one of those things that I think is so interesting.
Well, right. Well, the two of them too. They're noted, as you mentioned, the Addams Family. Jeffrey Combs, obviously known for horror B movies. You know, you do spooky stuff, B movie spooky stuff. Those are good guys to have around. So
yeah, absolutely. And you know, they do a ton of. They spend a lot of time looking at people to play the Lucy Linsky part. We talked about this in text, but she is named after Melanie Linsky. He says that. He goes like, you know, we just loved her so much. He goes. This is commentary is funny because it's you know, it's contemporaneous with the movie, right? So it's like recorded in 1997 or whatever, this commentary that he's doing for the movie. It's not like a 10 years later commentary. So he's like, people are asking me if Melanie's going to do other movies and stuff like that. She is. Don't worry. She had to go back to finish school, basically, is what he says.
We see her for a couple
She's
of
like a deputy, like a walk-on part. He's like, she was going to school, like, basically down the street from where we were shooting these scenes in Wellington. So I just asked her if she wanted to come down and shoot it. And she said, sure. So they end up casting, oh God, what's her name?
Trini Alvarado.
Trini Alvarado, who I was like, what else has she been in? She was played Meg March in These Little Women movie, but I think she's very good in this movie. But they said they saw like a ton of people, and one of those, she was like, we were starting to get nervous that we weren't going to find the right person, for it. And then we got this audition tape from her, and she's like, we almost immediately cast her in it. I think she's quite good in this movie with her Andie MacDowell hair. That's what I kept thinking of with her hair. They cast her, obviously Jake Busey, who is like just a special effect all of his own.
He's Busey and hard in this movie.
He's got the Buseying it up. This era, like there's a scene early in the movie where they're showing like the documentary footage and they have that like freeze frame of his face.
Oh, I love
scary.
it. Yep. Yeah.
And I'm like, man, Jake Busey in this era of movies was like, just do a scary black and white still of my face. And because like it's exactly the same thing in Contact. Contact, they do the exact same thing here. He's like he's the guy who blows up the one, spoilers for another Robert Zemeckis movie, blows up the one like chip thing or whatever. He's got the long white hair and they do like this like scary snapshot of his
religious
face.
zealot guy. Yeah. Remember that. Yep.
Dee Wallace, obviously Mom from E.T. is in this movie
Cujo?
as well. And Cujo, yeah, of course. But she's in this movie. Jeffrey Combs, we mentioned. Funny, if we're watching this movie now, I didn't know idea who Jeffrey Combs was, obviously, when I saw this movie the first time. And I wouldn't have, if we'd watched this movie a year and a half ago, I would have been like, I know that name, but have never seen anything he's in. I just watched Reanimator for the first time ever last year.
I just saw, we have a cult classics, Connecticut cult classics here, and they just did Bride of Reanimator, so I went back and watched Reanimator, and then went to see Bride of Reanimator there, and he is a blast in those movies.
Oh my God.
I forgot how good those movies were, and just how good he is in those movies. I mean, I want him in everything. I remembered he was in this. I remembered a little bit about the character, and he just brings this energy that I just want to see so much more of. I mean, you can't go wrong, particularly in a movie like this with Jeffrey Combs.
No, definitely not. And like seeing Reanimator for the first time, I've only seen the first one. I went into it, I was like, okay, this is like a cult classic movie. I know, like I know this movie, right? I know what this movie, I know of this movie, and I know its reputation. And I have a lot of friends who were big horror fans who are like obsessed with this movie. Friends who would like come as like him for Halloween, like that kind of thing. And I was kind of like, okay, let's see, like, how it is. And I ended up loving it. I was like, this fucking movie rules.
It's very much in this same, I don't generally I like my horror movies disturbing and dark and like something that's gonna really get under my skin. But if you're there is a particular breed of horror comedy, which I do think Reanimator is. I definitely think The Frighteners is, where it's just, you take it to this extreme level where it's just funny and it's like, most of those movies are not scary. Most of those movies are not anything. I mean, there's nothing in them that is unsettling at all, but they're fun because they kind of play on stuff that is. I don't know.
I mean, this movie, to be fair, The Frighteners is like a Merchant Ivory movie compared to The Reanimator.
Well, how so?
I'm just like, the level of craziness in Reanimator is like, I think 7x like what in The Frighteners, but anyway, so he gets brought in, and they shoot in New Zealand for like 6 months or whatever. So let's kind of, I guess we can go through the movie a little bit. So I guess I have a couple of, we can go through the scene by scene. I wrote down, I made sure I wrote down so we could go through it in my notes. But, we start with sort of like this opening where we're sort of establishing the Patricia character, which is interesting, right? The first character we see is Patricia. And the first character I think we see is her mom. I don't know what we see, one of the two. Jackson loves a weird old house with a crazy mom for sure. One of his go-tos.
Oh yeah, for sure. Looks a lot like the Dead Alive house.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. And they actually, so interesting again on the commentary, like obviously that big hospital building is real, but this house that they're in, like at least the front of it, is something they just built. They built it on that land to be there because there was nothing there. And he talks about in the commentary. It's so interesting, dude. He goes like, I never really like it, even in our movie, when you put like a building somewhere where it doesn't belong. He goes, not because it looks fake, but because you can just feel that it wasn't there. Like there's not like grass growing around it. There's not all this stuff. He goes, we're working on a movie now where I'm really thinking about going and building some of these sets and then leaving them for like 6 or 7 months, coming back. And I'm like, he's fucking talking about Lord of the Rings right now. little devil man talking about Lord of the Rings without telling anybody he's talking about Lord of the Rings at this moment. But yeah, the scene starts here and calls him Wallpaper Man when if this is what they called him apparently, like, you know, when they were like conceiving of the effect.
Before we even get to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, so this the camera work in this movie is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's so Peter Jackson. We know he's kind of already, we've seen him establish this. We talked about it with Heavenly Creatures, where this camera is always moving. It's got this like giddy sort of rushing energy about it.
Big wide lenses always.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get into this house through a hole in the roof where there's like a mouse or a rat or something that's climbing out. We go like past the rodent, whatever it is, down through this hole into the ceiling. We're like picking up a chase scene in progress, essentially. I mean, this movie is super high energy. Like there is no, and I'm really interested now because was thinking this all the way through the Frighteners. There is not a moment of stillness in this movie whatsoever. Like there's emotional scenes, but even that, like this movie is cars crashing through fences all the time. There are so many dollies in on characters here. Like the camera never stops moving. The energy never flags for a second. For some critics who didn't like it, like Roger Ebert, it was just like way too much. And I understand. I really like that. You know, I'm particularly the older I get, it's like as much as I want to say that I love slow cinema, I also, my attention span is not as long as it was at an earlier point in my life. And I appreciate the energy. I appreciate the movement. Like this movie is just super hyper caffeinated at all times. And we get it right away, right? Like we get the cameras descending down like onto this roof. We get Michael J. Fox. We don't get the title of the film. He's above the title here, which I like a lot.
Love it.
And it's just, you know, we are just rushing through this scene and it's like shit is falling off the walls and breaking and there's shotgun fire and it's a lot to take in right from the beginning. I think this movie is it's real, it's excessive, not in the same way that Dead Alive. It's got the same energy as Dead Alive, but it's not like that splattery, gross, you know, what's the next shocking thing that we're going to show you, but it's just, we're never going to let the action flag for a second.
Yeah, no, not at all. And he talks about too, like, you know, when it comes that like kind of oneer, that kind of, that's not a real oneer, it's a stitched together oneer. But when it goes through the top of the house, he's like, this, you know, those are digital floorboards that are going through, right? They're stitching together 2 shots or 3 shots to get through the, like, for that opening shot to come into the house, basically. He goes, because like, you know, obviously we're coming into this like top of this house we built, or this like facade we built. He's like, there's no actual house inside of that house, you know, like it's not like there's like, so we had to stitch together, and that was not something people did before that. Like you never, I mean, obviously in a couple of years, we mentioned this before we started recording, in Panic Room, Fincher is going to make it like a feature of the movie, right? Which is like these digital sort of like going through the house shots, right? But this is a new thing that they're doing, right? In this moment. And again, it's like you mentioned that we talked about this in other episodes. And if I was going to make a video essay about the career of Peter Jackson, it would probably be called High Degree of Difficulty. It just seems like that is like what he is like into doing, right? He's like, what, because he mentions when he talks about the movie, he goes, I wanted it to be a live effects. He's like, but I did not want it to be set locked cameras where you had, you know, where it was like kind of still, so you could,
they never
effects were easy to put, you know, he's like, I wanted the camera moving around. I wanted it, you know, crazy. And he talks a lot about, he goes like, the hardest scenes to shoot are the scenes where it's just a couple people talking. Cause you're like, I'm like, how am I going to make this interesting? You know? So, but the kickoff scene is great. We kind of establish a little bit of this, you know, this entity. We also set up the red herring sort of, you know, rug pull sort of concept that's going to come later with Patricia in the movie.
We definitely think the mom is some kind of, you know, like a Dead Alive sort of mom.
Yeah. I mean, this woman's being tortured or, you know, whatever by this entity, you know, and then we get like this, you know, big opening credit scene where we're seeing this funeral, and we're giving, you know, we're starting to kind of seed the information about the movie, right? Frank is this like guy, he's at a funeral and he's giving out business cards, you know, a psychic, about being a psychic, be able to talk across the aisle. We're also getting this sort of like superimposed, but I think a pretty clever little thing with the newspaper reporter kind of being like setting up what's going on in the town, and you know what you know what kind of the stakes are, right? All these people are dying, they don't know why, they seem like heart attacks, but all these people are really healthy, you know, and all this kind of stuff. So we're kind of setting up the world a little bit, right? And really before we even really hear Michael J. Fox talk, Like he crashes through the fence.
He is the worst driver I've ever seen
Oh
in a
my
movie.
god. Oh my god. So such a bad driver.
This is it's before GTA, but it's like very GTA drivers crashing
Yes.
through mailboxes, crashing through fences,
Yeah.
driving off the road for no good reason other than like there's no obstacle there, but it's like I can get there a little faster if I just go over the corner. I really like that.
Yeah,
Again, like
absolutely.
that's what this movie really feels like to me too, right? Like the rushing, giddy camera work in Heavenly Creatures is like, this is what it feels like to be a
Mhm.
14-year-old girl in love, with your
Yeah.
emotions running high. This is what it feels like to be this harried sort of a huckster character who's just
Yeah.
always in a rush to get from one thing to it's like I don't know that I would love that sort of energy in any film, but like for these, I think it really serves a purpose. It's not
Yeah.
just, I mean, Peter Jackson just wants to keep moving the camera and to, like you said, to show off that he
Yeah.
can handle that high degree of difficulty, but also it really works nicely for the character, I think, too.
Yeah. And I think it's just what I think it's some of his natural, provocation and provocation for style. Like it's what he likes. He's been doing it since Bad Taste, right? He just likes moving the camera around. He likes big wide angles. He likes like sort of manic, unsettling sort of situations. And I think that just continues to go over and over and over again in his
But
work.
see, that's what I was starting to say before, right?
Yeah.
Like it's been a while since I saw the Lord of the Rings trilogy,
Hmm.
and like having seen these movies, and even Heavenly Creatures, the one that is the most,
Hmm.
the most merchant ivory, I guess if you want to
Hmm.
say it that way, of all those movies, like there's very little stillness in that movie,
Hmm.
right? And it is for a lot of it, it's a story about friendship, it's a love story, but even when Kate Winslet is in bed coughing, doing
Hmm.
the dramatic melodramatic sort of sick girl thing
Hmm.
that we see in movies all the time, the camera's like dollying up to her
Hmm.
face and following things around. And like my recollection of the Lord of the Rings trilogy is there are moments of like genuine stillness and
There are.
contemplative. Are there? Or am I
There
just
are.
imagining that?
No, there
Okay.
definitely are. I mean, but I think and I think we'll obviously get into this a lot when we talk about the movies, but I think there is like the genius of him doing those movies is that there is this mix between that sort of like traditional big budget sweeping filmmaking and this sort of like raw, like, feels like a guy with a camera just
Uh-huh.
running around vibe, and I think that mix is what makes him so special as a filmmaker. And I think, you know, um, and I think obviously there's not a lot of quiet here. There's a couple moments I think where it slows down a little bit, but for the most part, it is pretty much just go, 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 go. I mean, where he crashes into a fence, we meet, the Ray Linsky character played by Peter Dobson, who, again is very much a cartoon character of a human being, right? And most people in this movie are cartoon characters. Right? This is very much like a living cartoon in many, many
Oh,
ways.
for sure.
There's so much energy in every little thing, and nobody is just like, oh, this is just like your standard like guy who's in a movie like this. Like there is just nobody who's like that in this movie. And I think that, you get this like immediate clashes of energy between Fox and him, and I think that's really nice. And then, you meet Lucy, who's going to the place you saw at the very beginning of the movie, and she has a whole different energy than either one of them have. And she's got a little bit of that, like, very pale, dark hair, sort of like Burton-esque sort of look
Yeah, I
and
was gonna
vibe
say
to her for
Winona
sure.
Ryder. Yeah.
Yeah, Winona Ryder vibe to her for sure. But there's like what I like about her character is there's like a little bit of a weirdness to her. While there's also a very like a very nice center to her as well, like a really kind of honest, real center to her too, which I think is important in a movie like this where everything is like so crazy. And you kind of get all your main characters set up pretty fast, and then this idea. I really like the archival footage, of like the murder when we see the Busey character. I love the like transition it does when she like pulls away from the house, and as she pulls away from the house, like it's almost like a wipe where it becomes the black and white version of the house, and you're in the footage like right from there.
Oh, he's clearly having a lot of fun with this vintage. It's like a true crime documentary that
Yeah.
he's making up footage for,
And you
and
know what he
yeah.
said? He said that's just the work print of the movie. Like they just, basically used the work print version of that footage they shot.
Oh, okay. So it's a little grainier and kind of like
Yeah, like, it has
more
like
vintage looking.
the more
Yeah.
vintage looking because he's like, we just used that because we just didn't finish that part of the movie off, and that's why it looks like that, basically.
Well, there's this great thing, and I guess you might see this in a sensationalistic true crime documentary where it's the execution of Johnny Bartlett,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like the electric chair sounds, and it's like almost like a jump scare. It's like this very, very loud sound effect, and
Yeah.
like you don't know if it's in the film that they're watching or if it's in the reality of the movie. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely is something where it's like a low budge. Like we can't film a reenactment of somebody being electrocuted, so let's just put a picture of an electric chair,
And a very jarring sound effect.
Yeah. And the cover, little Easter egg, the cover of the that true crime
It's got
box, it's got Melanie
the
Linsky and Kate Winslet
characters on it. Yep.
Yeah. It's got the actress, the fictional versions of them on the front there. And we got our first sort of haunting in this, and
this scene is a wonderful parody of Poltergeist.
Yes, it absolutely is. Yeah.
Like it's not shot like Poltergeist, but it's the same stuff. It's Poltergeist in a heightened Peter Jackson madcap sort of style. The chicken killed me. I loved that.
That's not in the theatrical version. He said that's one.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Because I remembered
out.
the chicken, so I guess I had seen the director's cut the last time.
Yeah. And then we get a very Ghostbusters-ish, classic ghost huckster scene where Fox shows up with a weird radio that he says is a ghost trapper.
He's got his little viewfinder thing.
Yeah. And we kind of we get this set up, the first appearance of the numbers. I love the number thing. I think it's so evocative.
I do too, and I feel like when we see it in this, it's a very silly scene. Ray is a very silly character. That number 13 on his head is a really good scare.
Yeah.
That is not a lot of this movie is genuinely unsettling. That actually is. And that's one of the things I think is brilliant about the Frighteners is, yes, it's very silly. Yes, it's very screwball. But there are a couple of moments here that are pretty scary. Like Peter
when he
Jackson
decides to switch the gear, he can switch the gear. Yeah.
Yeah, and it works really, really well for this. And I think it works better because it's in so much contrast to the other stuff that is, in most cases very goofy. Like all the other haunting stuff here, the chicken, the Elvis figure kind of floating around, it's Ray is kind of ranting and raving. There's dishes flying out of the cabinets behind him. It's all very silly. And the scene kind of builds to this very quiet moment because we don't know what it is yet, but he's just got this number on his forehead. And that is very important later on in the movie. We do kind of learn what that all is. But yeah, I was like, oh, that's pretty creepy right there.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, you're just so not prepared to be creeped out. Oh, when we see the shadow of the chicken, I thought, it's got a little bit of a Silent Hill kind of vibe to it also.
For sure, it did,
but the number I think was much scarier. And it really does show that he has a real command of what he's doing.
Yeah, 100%. And what I like is that, this stuff, most of it is silly, right? And then we quickly learn why it's silly, right? Which is that these ghosts are friends with Michael J. Fox's character, and that they work for him to help him with this sort of this sort of con he's putting on. It's just a funny con, right? Because he actually isn't a con man. He actually can see ghosts. Ghosts actually are real, but he's turned it into a little business for himself. And this part of the movie, and it's funny to listen to Jackson on the commentary, because part of the thing he talks about is he goes, this is the part of the movie that I'm the least happy with, is what he says. He goes I don't think I pulled off all of these sort of ghost scenes and the banter and everything as well as I really wanted to. That was what he said. He goes, he's I really, really the second half of the movie works exactly how I want it to. And he goes, I really feel this first half of the movie, there's just stuff that I just didn't do as well as I wanted to. So part of it too is the house, this partly finished house. He goes, I didn't really communicate the concept of it, the thematic concept of it, I think, well enough for what we wanted it to be, which is this guy basically abandoned his life in the middle of it because he's given up on life, basically.
Let me ask you, do you agree with that? Because I don't agree with that at all.
I don't agree with it necessarily. I think
I think this stuff is great.
I think it's really fun. I do think there's a little bit, and I think some of this is just due to the fact that these were new shooting techniques, and it's really tough to act against nobody, and some of the staging I think can feel a little bit
it's a little sitcom-y.
You can feel a little bit of we're really trying to do something here, but I do think overall it's a net benefit for the movie. Even though I do agree, I think that once Dammer shows up, the movie is in supercharge mode to the end, basically. Not even action wise, just like energy, personality,
Yeah.
like things working wise. I like all this at the beginning. It's for me, this beginning is more like I can see all the things he really wants to do with it, and I think he gets like 85% there. So I'd rather have it there than something else. I think
Yeah, I mean, I guess
you know
that's
what I
where
mean?
I'm at too. But I love
Yeah,
the world building. I
me too.
love,
Yes.
I think actually the dialogue and the banter between him
Mm,
and the ghost is a lot of fun. Like just this
mm,
whole arrangement they have.
yeah.
It's a con man setup, right? Like
Yeah.
this is in some sense like one of those con man movies. It's a team
Yes.
of hucksters kind of working together to bilk people out of their money.
It's like
And
Now
I
You
just
See Me, but with ghosts.
yeah. And like, Shy McBride and his whole, he wants to smoke a cigar.
Uh-huh.
Well, can you just smoke a cigar and blow it in my face? Like stuff
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like it kind of builds the rules of the world and what he can
Yes.
interact with and stuff like that. I love the unfinished house. I've always, even when I was a kid, I thought that was, it's a very
Mhm.
obvious metaphor, but I think a very good one, very
Yeah.
powerful one. The reveal later of the garden, like
Mhm.
really kind of got to me. I don't know. I think I disagree with that. Like I think the second half of the movie, as good as it is, because it is just so balls to the wall and it doesn't
Mhm.
slow down, I almost kind of missed this later on. Like
I agree
I
with you. I mean, I think this stuff is
kind of
necessary and
want a
good for sure.
little bit more of these characters kind of hanging out, being together, and showing me a little bit of what
Yeah.
the rules of this whole living dead arrangement sort of are. And
I love rules in movies. So like I love like setting up like ghosts can be affected by physical things. They
yeah, and
can
they can
be
affect physical things.
and they can be hurt by other ghosts, right? Because they get scared when the judge comes in and starts shooting his gun or whatever. So like I like that they set up all
And
those
that's
rules.
how you get your gore effects in too, right? Like he can
Yeah.
shoot like a bloody hole in
Yeah.
in Stewart's face, and it's not really a violent scene, but
No.
it's has a little bit of that splatter feel, which is a fun way around that, I thought.
For sure, yeah. And also setting up like ghosts also get old. Like they have like a shelf life, right? I think that's also
They
something
run
that
out
they
of
set up.
ectoplasm.
Yeah, they
I
set
feel
that
like
up
that
as
some days
well.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They set all that stuff up as well, which I like. All that stuff I dig. There's some stuff in here like just like the whole kind of like even though the scene is fun with like the babies and whatever, it just feels like that scene where he's like, I'm gonna lose the house, and then also like we got to do this con that's not gonna work out with the family or whatever. Those scenes just feel a little superfluous to me. It's like the house being lost gets dropped immediately. They can never talk about it again.
Yeah.
So it's like, why is this a part of the story? And like the thing where the woman finds out he's a con man doesn't really affect him at all, really, right? It's like it's not like it's a big part of it. It just
No, because he's
drives him
already
to the
kind of got
newspaper office.
the reputation. Sure. Yeah,
So
they're
like,
already
yeah,
besmirching his name in the
he could have
news.
seen that newspaper like on the street, and gone to the newspaper office. You know what I mean? So it's like that's the only part for me. It feels like it's a little bit like. And again, the movie moves so fast. It's not like those scenes aren't enjoyable. The scene with the babies is really fun. One of those kids is actually Peter Jackson and Fred
Yeah.
Walsh's son, the one in the red.
Yep.
Like fun, totally fun and a good time. You know what I mean? But like just one of those couple scenes where I'm like, this, if you were going to cut stuff out of the theatrical cut, this is some of the stuff maybe you could have cut out and kept some of the other stuff. But I still like those scenes. But again, I think that's the only stuff that feels a little bit clunky to me, I guess. And then we learn that Ray is dead, right? Which this stuff I love. I love this whole sequence. I love that he comes running up to him. We get Peter Jackson cameo. We can't forget about Peter Jackson looking like a real freaking, dirtbag again. We get that great scene.
Asshole.
Yeah. And apparently his face isn't in the theatrical. Like,
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he goes, I felt it was a little bit too self-indulgent to show my face.
Yeah, it's like blink and you miss him even in the director's cut.
I know, which is it's just funny.
Very similar to his Heavenly Creatures cameo. Like,
yes,
almost
absolutely.
the same, very, very similar
like
character,
every
similar
cameo
place.
he does. We're gonna see this in all the Lord of the Rings movies. He's in it for like blink and you miss it, like moment, basically in all of these things. So he I love this scene with Ray and Frank, and I think again we're kind of setting up more of the rules, right, as well as kind of getting out some fun, information that's moving the plot forward. I think that both the performances are really good, and I think they're really
I really
good
like
playing
Peter
up to
Dodson in this. We haven't really talked too much about him.
Yeah.
Bringing that kind of mid-90s Ben Affleck energy
Yeah,
to this
for sure,
role.
yeah.
And, like he ends up being kind of a fun character.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because he's in so much of the beginning of the movie, I forgot how much of a role he actually plays later on. And I was like, why are we spending so much time with this guy? But actually, he's kind of part of the story all the way through. And
yeah, he is.
And I like, Beetlejuice does a very similar thing.
Hmm.
There's the guide. It's been a long time since I've seen Beetlejuice, but what it means to be dead in this
Yeah, yeah.
particular world, and like as you were saying, like the rules of the game, as it
Hmm.
were. And it's really fun how these characters are, they don't look at being dead as like this very tragic thing. Like this movie doesn't have that sort of
No,
vibe about it at all. Like it never takes death particularly seriously,
no.
which I think is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
These characters die. It's just like, it's more of a, like, what a crazy situation. I'm
Yeah.
dead now. Like I have to learn
Yeah.
how to be a dead person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like that because it's kind of a grim story actually, and
It
it
is. It
does
absolutely is.
sometimes, like I said, it does kind of push those buttons. I don't know. It's not a morbid movie, and
No,
even
not at
though
all.
it's literally about the Grim Reaper, it is about death, it's about mass murder.
Hmm.
There's so much really dark stuff in this, but it has this very cheeky attitude about it, and I really like it's Beetlejuice. I think is a very good comparison to this, just in
Yeah,
terms
Beetlejuice
of
is a pretty good comparison to it.
tone
Yes.
and approach, and how it takes like, this is a fun movie for goth kids, but it's not like it doesn't have like the philosophy behind it where it's you walk out of this thinking about death, I guess.
No, no, not at all. Actually.
Like the closing scene is very much that, right, where she puts the sheet over and
Yeah.
chases
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
around. And
Yeah.
what a perfect way to end this movie. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I like the tone of this a lot, I guess is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I think this funeral scene is really funny. We meet like the Arlie Ermy character who's basically playing his Full Metal Jacket character, who like he's like
Yeah,
the drill sergeant of the cemetery ghosts.
he can materialize belt fed machine guns out of thin
Yeah.
air. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Jackson talked about, he goes like, we wrote the part like not for him. We just wrote it like we wanted like this drill sergeant type character. And if you're gonna write a drill sergeant character, you write it like the most famous drill sergeant in movies. He goes, and we didn't even like send it to him because we're like, he's not gonna want to do this. Like, like why would we send it to him? And he was like, and then they were having trouble finding him, and they're like, why don't you just send it to him and see what he says? They sent it to him, and there he was like, he got the joke completely. He was so up for doing it. He flew to New Zealand and did this, and he was like, he was really great about it. So it was like a fun story. Great movie for just like weird guys that are all over the place. Because then we get to meet the sheriff, who's played by Troy Evans, who's just one of those, and again, one of those guys, like one of those faces that you saw when you grew up, when we grew up, who was in like a ton of stuff, who's still alive and still doing stuff now, and he's just like this interesting presence, where he's like, he has a little bit of that like I'm a small town sheriff thing, but he's not dumb, but he's got like that kind of like aw shucks kindness thing to him as well. I really like him in this movie. I just like his presence in the movie quite a bit. Get that really funny scene where where Peter is stuck in his grave and he's getting buried alive, which I think was really funny. And then the next thing we really get is that restaurant scene where sort of like Lucy is sort of asking him, what Ray kind of left for her and what he has to say to her and stuff like that. I
This
think that
is so
scene
funny. This is a very it's like a rom-com scene almost.
It's very
It's
ghost type scene too, like a scene that would be in Ghost.
sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it is, and that's another thing that I really liked about this movie is it's kind of taking these very popular movies, but it's Poltergeist, it's Ghost, it's Beetlejuice, it's Ghostbusters a little bit, like all these other movies that kind of touch on this stuff, and it's kind of wrapping them all. It's touching on elements of all of them, and those are all very successful, very popular movies, and very notable movies. And clearly, Peter Jackson has seen them. Clearly, he appreciates them. And it's like, this never feels like anything but a Peter Jackson movie, but it is drawing on all of these things that, there's like a familiarity to a lot of things, particularly like this scene, where Frank and I was going to call her Melanie.
Lucy.
Frank and Lucy are sitting across from each other at a table, is sitting next to her and like trying to get information to Frank. Frank is like giving her some of it, not all of it, making stuff up. It's a lot of fun. It also, it kind of sets up the little bit of a romance we get in this movie. There's definitely some sparks flying between the two of them there. And it's just a fun scene because it does, like everything else in the movie, it moves really quickly. There's the bit, where he spills the wine and all that stuff. We do get a little bit of his backstory here, but it's not so much that it's like, let's stop the movie in its tracks to tell us a little bit about Frank. And, the fact that he doesn't give her everything, I think tells us something about him too. And then we're back in Grim Reaper death murder land for a little while, very quickly.
I just want to say one thing. There's one moment you're talking about when Frank sort of gives her part of his story, but not all of it. One of those things where it's just one little moment, but because Fox sells it so well, he becomes more of a real person, right? And these are very important little things that happen in movies, and why performance is so important, because Fox is able to give him like an emotional center where you actually feel for him. Oh, this guy has like a thing, and it's like it's a real thing. He's not just some like quick-witted, fast-talking huckster. There's something going on, right? And I think that's a really important thing that happens
Are you
here.
talking about the moment where he tells her about the car accident, right?
Yeah,
Like what kind
explains
of,
how he can see ghosts,
how his wife
basically.
was killed, how
Yeah.
he can see ghosts.
He doesn't
But
say his wife is killed, though. He doesn't
no,
tell her. Yeah.
right. But she asked
Yeah.
him something like, "Tell me more," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like, there's this moment where he's like, "No, you should talk to Ray now."
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
it's real sad. There's like genuine melancholy in
Yep.
that. And then, of course, big cartoony Peter Dobbs is like, "Yeah, let me talk now."
Yeah.
It's like it undercuts it right away, like right where it needs to, where before it becomes, straight up pathos. But Michael J. Fox is good enough in this scene where
Yeah.
we get it. Like, we do kind of feel for him in that moment. And then, like I said, we're kind of off to the races with other stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I really, I find this a very sympathetic character. I find this
Yeah.
movie, I know you gave me a lot of crap for saying I enjoyed the romance in Dead Alive, but I really do. I like the character stuff in this movie as well, and I like this
Yeah.
character a lot. And the because as much as it doesn't take death seriously, the death has weight in this movie, right?
Yeah.
Like loss has weight in this
Loss
movie.
has weight for sure.
It's just not morbid about it. It's just
Yeah.
not kind of throwing it in your face like what death actually means. And
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of that's very careful writing, I think, and very
Yes.
careful direction and acting, that you can kind of have this tone, have this like emotional shade in this movie that is also like way over the top, very, very goofy, very cartoony, and so many characters are just that.
Yeah. I like cartoonity, though. I like that. I think that's a good term. I think we should start using that as a term. And then we get another, like, I think this scene in the bathroom, again, it starts out silly, right? And then it turns into something not silly, right? And again, we get the number thing on the forehead.
I'm such a 12-year-old too. I love a scene like this where he sees ghosts in the bathroom and he's
Yeah.
like crawling on the floor, and there's this old man in there who has a number on his forehead, so we know he's gonna die. So we've got that. There's dramatic irony there, but he's just seeing Michael J. Fox like doing weird stuff in the restroom, and that's still very funny to
It
me.
is very funny, exactly, yeah. And then we get what I think is a truly impressive effect for the time when the thing comes out of the mirror.
Yeah.
The way that the mirror ripples and does like weird shit as it grabs it really looks good, I think. Of course, like we're talking about, very primitive, CGI effects here. So, we're not getting like the lighting and the texture work that is going to become, just usual in maybe 10 years from now when this movie is made. But, they're using the tools they have, I think, pretty effectively. And the scene is good. And I also like the chase scene when he's like chasing the Grim Reaper character like through the town and like watching it jump on the rooftops and like kind of move like a spider across like the thing.
This is the one time actually driving the way he does it makes
It's
sense.
good. Yeah. He's like going across, whatever things. And like Jackson's talking about the commentary.
Like flying in and out of the car, and it's
Yeah.
it's a very well designed, very Warner Brothers cartoon kind of sequence, and I really like that about it.
Jackson talks about how like that road that the accident happens on and everything, and like the like the really windy road. He goes, that road's like I drive on the road every day. And he goes, those curves, I always wanted to like cut the curves. He's like, but I'm too much of a chicken. So when I went with the movie together, I was like, you're definitely gonna cut these curves. Seems really fun. It's one of these things where this is not a critique of the movie, but it's a thing where like these sort of like mistaken guilt, like, oh, it looks like this person did it, but they didn't really do it in the circus thing. It always like gives me like the like uncomfortable feeling. Like I'm like, I don't want to watch this like feeling in it, like whatever reason. Not a criticism against the movie. It's just like a thing where I'm like, can we get through this part where they think he's the killer or whatever and he hasn't been caught yet or whatever?
Well, right. And it gets a lot worse.
It gets so much worse. First of all, look at me. These fucking cops, all right? Like, they're just shooting at him. They're destroying an entire museum trying to get him, and they're just like,
this is
trying
great.
to kill
There's
him.
like skeletons of like some prehistoric rodents or something, and they're just like he's blasting them. It actually looks like the Sumatran rat monkey. Now that I think about it, they're destroying like priceless artifacts just to shoot this guy who is clearly not armed and not like. Well, he's got the water pistol, right?
Oh yeah, but I don't think he has it with him at that point. But yeah, he has that water pistol. I should say we skipped over, like, we're going to the museum scene, but before that happens, we do meet Dammers for the first time.
So
Lucy's
much
in the
fun.
police station. And he's like, the FBI is here, and we get this entrance from Combs, and this whole scene is great. Everything with Combs is great. He's like MVP of this movie for sure. He brings this insane energy to the table, while also, I think, at times knowing just when to bring it down just enough where it becomes, you know, interesting or menacing, then bounding back into like silly crazy, right? But when he's like explaining the time and mechanics of Frank's wife's death, like, he's just good in it. He's just like, his voice is at the pitch of this register, and he's got this like delivery that is like really good, and like I think really affecting and creepy, and like really sells like the story he's telling her, right, about the death of this thing, with this flashback of like, Frank in his basketball court and the drive. This is one of the things Jack said in the commentary. He's like, this is one thing where I failed. He's like, because the concept was like, by the end, you're supposed to realize that, like, Patricia set it up. Like, she put a log across the road, and that's what made him swerve and fall down. He's like, but we didn't really shoot that, and I never really delivered it. And he's like, that's the part he said he thinks he fails the worst on, is like communicating like this was all a setup. It wasn't just like a crime of opportunity. It wasn't like the car crashed and they happened to be there. Like, it was like they set it up.
That much though? I mean,
I don't think it matters that much either. No, but this
is
is one of those things, those concepts, right, that he's trying to like, put together. But I mean, I don't have much to say about Combs other than I think he's just amazing in this movie. His whole look, the haircut,
the haircut's terrific. Yeah, that like
the way he dresses,
down to the side thing. Yeah, very, very Third Reich.
Yes, absolutely.
And I guess maybe that's why you were saying the one of the things that they cut out of the theatrical version is the swastika on his scene, which I mean, I guess if you didn't know that Charles Manson exactly that on his forehead, you might kind of read that a lot differently. Particularly, he is very pale. He does have that
definitely
Third Reich haircut. You could definitely see that. But again, it's just this like weird, disturbing, out there sort of thing that I think fits perfectly for the character either way.
Yeah.
And he's just, Jeffrey Combs is like such a perfect B-movie actor, right? Like that's what B-movies, that's what exploitation movies are these like heightened, can't take it too seriously, but it is going to show you something that is a little out of the ordinary. That's Reanimator, right? That's why that movie is fun. They could have made Reanimator as more straight up kind of sci-fi horror movie, but because his character is so manic, because the special effects and that kind of go to the place that they go, I really like that. Is he's that like splatter movie trash in something that is, this is a studio, like you don't see Jeffrey Combs doing these things in relatively big budget. And it's not a big budget movie, but a relatively big budget.
I mean, it's a movie that has Robert Zemeckis' name on it. Michael J. Fox is the star of it. It's not like it's not a $5 million indie horror movie. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what it is. It's not a trauma movie. It's not somebody bringing him in and being like...
Right, and this character is straight out of like a trauma movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, yes.
But what's so good about the performance is that, yes, he's unbelievably, almost unrealistically strange, right? But I don't know if I can explain this in a way that makes sense. But the strangeness really feels like it's coming from a place, an internal place, from this person, and not like him just doing things to do things. You know what I mean? It feels like there is like a thought out nature to the insanity that he's doing that is not just like, I'm going to do the craziest thing I can think of right now. Like, it doesn't feel like that.
He has comedic chops, but it's not, he's not in your face, but like, this is not like an SNL character. It's a Crispin Glover kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like an internal logic for his performance to what he's doing, right? It's not like, yes, it's insane, but it's not just like, I'm going to be crazy. That's not what it is, He does a good job of making it really feel like this guy just is so messed up inside that this is how he acts, and he's got all these weird, like, hang-ups, he doesn't like when women yell at him, he doesn't like being touched, all of this stuff.
And right up until his last scene in the movie, and I've seen this movie multiple times, I could not remember, does he end up being like a genuine bad guy? Like, is he like kind of working with Bartlett, whatever, and he's not.
But he is a bad guy, But
he is, right? He's an antagonist. He's a villain. But like, I couldn't remember how bad he was because I feel like he could go whatever direction. There's no floor there. It could be whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the museum scene that's big and crazy, and we do get some really fun effects here. I love that like the judge shows up and is able to like get death off of Magda, right? That's her name, the newspaper woman. And then he just has sex with a mummy.
Oh,
I
that's
guess.
so funny.
And it's so funny that line where he goes like, I love it when they just lay there like that.
They lie still like that.
Like, so,
The shot of his ghost butt going up and
yeah,
down
yeah,
out of the
yeah, yeah.
sarcophagus. I forgot that was in the movie too. That was really fun.
And I love the ghosts all bringing all the things to life, like the skeletons.
I was gonna say, yeah, they take a mummified corpse and it starts walking around. We get like a zombie scene and they're shooting at it, and that's so good.
And it's so funny because like, and the commentary Jackson laughs at that line, like when they lie still like that, and he goes like, a lot of people didn't like that line. You see what he says, He goes,
necrophilia jokes are a little far for this potentially PG-13 movie, but I thought it was a lot of fun.
And he goes, it's probably too far. He's like, but I like that kind of stuff. That's basically
Sure.
what he says.
This is the guy who made Meet the Feebles. Yeah,
exactly. And then we get this sort of like, scene with Magda where Frank's in the car with her and she's getting chased by the, by death or whatever. And we get sort of like a little bit of this is like a very Heavenly Creatures feeling thing when they go onto the road and it turns into like sepia tone look. And we get like
we start going back between past and present here. Yeah, he's having like visions, or he's kind of living in a spectral projection of the past.
Yeah, and we see like, when he crashes his car again, and Magda falls on the ground, but then he sees his wife, kind of thing, and then Magda ends up dying.
I almost feel like it's a little late in the movie. Like we're talking about like maybe the halfway point or just
we're
past
about halfway through.
Point.
Yeah.
I felt watching it this time that like maybe we should have seen some indication of this a little earlier on, because it does feel like a little bit unearned sort of superpower that he has, or an unearned thing that starts happening to him that I would have liked to have established earlier.
It's interesting because like at this point, I just took it as like he's just like remembering, right? He's kind of piecing together like thing. And of course, later it's not that. Later he's like, there's so much psychic energy or whatever. He's like basically getting transported to the past. So like at this point in the movie, when I'm watching it, obviously I've seen it many times now, but when I'm watching it, I'm not even thinking about it like, oh, this is him actually like kind of seeing into the past. I just took it as like he's remembering, stuff that he had forgotten, but
maybe, but it feels like he has so much presence in the
past. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Again, this is one of the things where I think it's a little bit muddy, right? Where it's like, there are certain things in this movie, like, obviously the judge dies right before this, like that, like kind of Ray getting taken out the way he gets taken out and not having like anything to do with the end of the movie. These feel a little bit like missed opportunities, a little bit like we weren't really sure what to do, so we just kind of like did a thing. Like that's kind of what it feels like, and this sort of feels like that as well.
I will say I love the relationship between the ghosts. Like they all seem to really care about each other. And there's this, when one of them dies, it is a really sad thing, even though they're already dead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, all the Magda stuff is like a little bit like the stuff I like the least, I guess, because it's like he's like it's important because it gets him into like the, it puts her death in line with his wife's death, and then so it makes like the interrogation scene mean a little bit more, right? Because you can see maybe sort of like the seed of doubt that Dammers is like putting into his head about like what's real and what's not, to him basically, and maybe it doesn't work without this section really bringing him so close to his like, wife's death in a certain way and bringing back those memories. But I really like the interrogation scene a lot. It's really disturbing and really intense and really weird. And and again, we get more, of course, Jeffrey Combs, which is great. Like they talk, like it's again the commentary thing. Jackson talks about how like, Michael J. Fox has obviously his people, and he has like a makeup person and a whatever. It's like he had one of his makeup guy to make his eyes look so bloodshot. Basically, had like what amounts to like mini tear gas that he would like purposely like get near his eyes, like weaker version of it. It's not like like weapon strength version of it, but like to make his eyes look so weird and bloodshot, like while he was having the scene. Just interesting little tidbits,
I actually like this whole section too. Like when things really start to go bad for Frank, like it does feel like the odds are very, very much stacked against him. Like he's not getting out of this. Reminds me a little of months ago we talked about The Town. There's like a somewhat similar interrogation scene in that, and like you kind of don't feel this this sort of dread for the character. And like, again, I've seen this movie multiple times, but like here, I'm really like, oh man, how is he going to get out of this? And how is he going to, eventually become the hero of this movie that we know he's going to be? Like it's a very, very low point, and it is communicated in such a way where, there's just dread, I think is
Yeah.
the word for it, right? There's a real sense that like, not only are things stacked against him, but like this is an impossible situation. I love that. This is a broad strokes, big swings kind of movie, and I feel like
Yeah.
even with that kind of stuff, it is very intense. Like you say, I mean, just the way he looks, the way this interrogation goes down, when he's locked up after this, I really sort of feel it.
Yeah.
Really creates a nice emotional connection with this character in this otherwise very silly movie.
And I love this idea that Dammers, right? It's such an interesting like choice for like the writing of the character, which is that he like almost has enough information to get it right, but he doesn't believe in the same type of supernatural weirdness that is actually going on. He thinks it's something completely different than what's going on. He thinks it's like he believes in like psychic powers and all this stuff, but he does not believe in ghosts or anything. He thinks all that stuff is like gobbledygook or whatever. And I think that's just a fascinating way to write the character, which is like because you can almost feel like you're saying like almost this moment where he would believe him, right? And all of a sudden he would kind of be helping him. You could see that in a version of this movie, right, where it's like he realizes that he was wrong, right? But they could take it to a way crazier place with him. But that is a thing you could see, but it's just like it's very kind of understandable in modern times where you have a lot of people who are like get like 90% of actually what's going on, but that 10% they don't get makes them completely wrong about what's going on. Like that's how I feel like this guy is, like in almost every way. So a couple stuff that's on the director's the theatrical cut that's in the director's cut. The whole scene where like he can't see the ghosts anymore when they walk in and come talk to him or whatever. That's not in the theatrical cut. And neither is the scene where Dammer's just kind of looking in on him, being like, "All end and I expect this case to suicide before it goes to trial or whatever." Well, because you and also I think that scene is kind of important because my screen just went to sleep. Hold on a second. My monitor went to sleep.
You're in and out of live right
I know, because my monitor went to sleep for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Hold on a second. Everything's going wrong. Like, what? There we go. Okay. I think we're back.
Yeah.
What is going on? Something is going on, dude. Hold on a second. Well, I don't know if my monitor is going to come back. And it's on my like vertical monitor right now. The window went over to my vertical monitor, but it's not vertical anymore. So it looks insane. I just want to tell you right now.
What are you seeing?
I'll show you what I'm seeing. I'll send you a picture, my friend.
Oh, okay. Because everything looks perfectly fine and normal
everything's
here.
Fine for you. It's not
your camera's working. Yeah,
my camera's fine. It's not that. It's
and your connection's fine.
Yeah, my connection's fine. It's just my monitor for whatever reason. You can look at it.
It's literally vertical.
It's literally vertical. I have a vertical monitor to my right, and for whatever reason, this monitor freaked out and is not working. And because it's not working, it's making everything. It thinks this is my main monitor now.
Right.
Great. Hold on.
I mean, I've done this to you how many times? Do what you need to. Take your time. Actually, you know what? I'm going to step out and pee because I might as well do that. And maybe that'll give you some time to figure this out. Be right back.
Okay. I think we're good. We're good. I think we're good now. I think we're good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I just
right.
I unplugged both the monitors and replugged them back in, and it seemed to have fixed it. The HDMI cable was like scalding hot. So I think
really?
That's probably what it was. I don't know how the fuck that happened. It's not even hot in here. It's like my landlord keep the AC on like negative 47 degrees, so it's always like freezing in my apartment.
Oh, dude, I'd be miserable.
Like I'd rather it be that than really hot. So I'd rather. But
see, I hate being cold.
Like I went during this whole heat wave. It was like you couldn't even have. I wouldn't even have told you it was a heat wave because it was so fucking cold in my apartment. So we're like in the summer, I'm wearing like sweatshirts because it's so cold in here. So anyway, let's get back to this.
Might be our first wardrobe change in the history of the show.
I just took off my sweatshirt.
I know.
We did a quick change. But anyway, the whole thing with him not being able to see the ghosts, and then Dammers being like, there's suicide or whatever. And I think it's an interesting scene because it's just like, forget about the Dammers thing. I like that the cop says like, we don't have any evidence that he did anything wrong. Because I'm thinking all the time, like, what evidence you have to arrest this guy? That he was near people who died? Like, that's not evidence. You can't keep somebody arrested
right,
for
and
that.
we didn't mention, right? Like the method of death is like their hearts are basically like squeezed from. There's no puncture wound or anything, so all these people are very mysteriously dying, and he just happens to. I mean, he is at this point in the film. He has been around enough of them where I'd be a little bit suspicious too.
Yeah,
but
he's been around like 2 or 3 of them. Like, there's been 28 of them. Has he been around all of them? Like, that's the thing I want to say. Like, I'm like, well, do better police work, guys.
His wife was the first.
His wife was the first, but then there's been a lot after that, But, I guess, the Dammer's excuse is that he's using his mind to do it, so he can be wherever he wants to be, right? He's wearing a nipple vest in order to stop himself from getting killed. Dammers is not Bannister, obviously.
Is that before this where he like rips his shirt open and he's got like
that's in the interrogation scene where he's like, are you trying to do it right now?
Bulletproof. Yeah, that's great.
And it's got nipples on it, the vest he's
does.
wearing. Of course it is.
Same year as Batman and Robin.
We get a fun.
Sorry, it's 2 years before Batman.
Yeah. We get a fun scene where Lucy's kind of going. She goes to Frank's house and she kind of sees his house. We see this like turn the basketball court into a garden.
I love this.
Yeah,
this is such a fun scene and such a good scene, right? Because she's there and like genuinely, like she has feelings for him at this point. She's heard a little bit about his wife and all that, so she is looking at like it's a dramatic scene for her. But then Ray is there also as a ghost, and she can't hear him, and he's just like, "Oh, this place is a shithole," and he's like kind of doing this like comedic running commentary on the whole thing. And so the scene has to kind of balance those two things, right? Like Ray being this silly asshole and her like genuinely getting a sense of who Frank is and developing deeper feelings for him. And just the garden. I know it's a very, very obvious thing, but I think it's such a nice touch.
I do too.
Already kind of got the story about that. That was the argument they had before she died, and he was going to build a basketball court. She wanted to have a garden there. So, and it's so well done too. There's this like disintegrating basketball hoop surrounded by like beautiful, clearly very well maintained flowers. We haven't seen that yet. We've been in the house a lot, up to that point in this movie, and it's done as a reveal to her. It's there for us as well. It's so nicely done. I mean, it's certainly melodramatic, but again, in this movie that is so heightened in so many ways, and that is heightened as well, but it's heightened in a different way than the rest of it is, and I really like that. And that coupled with just Michael J. Fox being that very sympathetic character, that very sympathetic actor, that does it, there's some real gravity to this movie that I definitely, I remember, as a much younger person seeing this the first time, like I was just in this for the special effects and the ghost shenanigans and all that stuff. And I remember being moved by it even then. And I was like, wow, this must be a really good movie, right? Like you spend that period of your life like, okay, what is a fun movie? What is a movie I enjoy watching? And what is a good movie? And I think, it's stuff like that just kind of signaled to young me, like The Frighteners is a good movie, right? Like this is clearly a very talented person. This is not somebody who's just trying to appeal to my teenage desire to see action and shenanigans and blood and guts and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also she goes back to the Patricia's house, and this is where we learned about like, where she sells even more the fact that her mom is crazy and blames her for everything, and she hides in the mom's closet and she finds Frank's. This big thing that Dammers brought up was that this switchblade knife, which has Frank's initials on it,
was in his toolbox,
and it's been missing since his wife died.
Yeah,
and his wife had the number 13 carved into her head. So that's also one of the reasons, right, why they think it's they think it's Frank who's doing it. And she finds this thing in the closet, and she basically like heads to the police station. And then you think in like a more standard movie, she'd go to the sheriff or something and be like, look, I found this in this woman's closet, obviously it's not Frank. But no, she like goes into the cell, and I think it's funny that like they think he's killed 28 people, but they're like,
just let her in, and lock the door behind her. Let us know when you're done.
Yeah. Which I think is just so funny. But this is a scene where I think like I like the concept of like this like kind of very small space where he, like Bannister's trying to protect her from, the death trying to kill her because she has the number on her head now. And like, the
This
ghost,
is where he sees it the first
he
time,
sees
right?
it the first time on her head. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the ghosts are like, fighting and trying to like save them and trying to get him out or whatever. And I really like the concept of it. I don't think it necessarily like the stuff in the cell itself works exactly, I think, as they want it to, but I still think it's fun and good. And then I do like, this like escape scene where they're kind of running out, and the way she kind of plays like, plays like the victim to Dammers, and then like just wrecks him with a fire extinguisher when they're trying to leave. I like that. Poor both the ghosts get killed. Poor both those ghosts.
Yeah, I thought there would be more of them.
Yeah, we should say Ray is already dead at this point. Dead again, dead. Because he sees the house as like this kind of like devil house, and then he goes in there and gets, chopped up by the Reaper or whatever. And then I think once we're at this point, we are really in just like breakneck to the end. There is like no moment of stillness from now until the end. It's
very long. It's the third act, but like this is the start of the third act, and we've got like 40 minutes to go. It's
absolutely.
Pretty, I guess, in the director's cut. And again, you're the one who saw the theatrical cut more recently, but yeah, there's a lot still to go here, and it is all just a roller coaster ride. Like we never get another scene like the restaurant or anything like that.
No. And I would say this end portion, the only stuff that's real, there's only like one or two additional scenes in the director's cut that isn't in the theatrical. Like the Dammer stuff in the cemetery is more like drawn out because we see the tattoos a little bit more. And he says some more stuff, and then like that scene at the end when they're in the morgue or whatever, and like Patricia and Johnny are like doing their little game where like you see the flashback of them like making out on like the dissection table or whatever. That's not in the theatrical version. But most of the stuff is from now to the end is just, it's almost the same. There's not as much cut out here as there was. Most of those cut out was more like in the first half of the movie, a lot more, some ghost stuff, just some more like additional scenes, stuff like that. And I think like this is great. I mean, I love the idea. I mean, it's hilarious that like Lucy has like a death freezer in her doctor's office. I don't really know like what the deal is in this small town, but basically Frank has to die to become a ghost. It's the only way he can like fight the other ghost, right? Fun conception, like fun idea.
A flatliner for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. And Dammers, of course, shows up, but yeah, he has to be revived in like 20 minutes, or he might just die, right? That's
this is all. I mean, from here to basically the end of the movie is just this sustained action sequence, and this is the start of it where Frank actually gets to go into the netherworld, the ghost realm or whatever, by dying, by being, technically dead in the real world for a while. And we've seen scenes like that before and other things, but I think it's particularly with the ticking clock that they've got here, which we literally see a ticking clock a number of times. We keep cutting back to that in this scene, and the way Dammers is there to kind of like prevent her from getting back to him. That all works really well. I think it's a very well executed, it's kind of suspense sequence that is, I texted you, right? Like this movie is always punching above its weight class, right? Like this would be a fun scene, even if it didn't have all those complications and all of that tension, but it's fun and it has that, and you're just like so with it. You're like so into this. I mean, I don't remember a lot about this scene, not because I didn't just watch the movie, but because I was just so on board for it. I was like, it's one of those things where it's kind of swept me up, and I wasn't analyzing anything. I was just like, holy shit, this is great. Like I'm with both of these characters. I'm in the moment very much with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved all this stuff. I think the Frank as ghost stuff is a lot of fun. I like the two, like we've got the real, like the physical world, sort of threat, and the spiritual world sort of threat, and they're both happening at the same time. And this idea, right, that Dammers is going to let Frank die is like the moment where you kind of, it's Jackson and Walsh being like, you can allow yourself now to be okay when he gets his head blown off later, right? Like he's not a good guy. Like he's not a good guy. He's not just like a wrong-headed guy. He just is not good. And like that, given that permission structure is nice in the movie. And I mean, I like him shooting, the Reaper with the two machine guns after Arlie Ermey's like ghost gets ripped in half. And this is where like I think like, some of like the effects work with the Reaper is a little bit suspect when they get into like the physical, like when they're physically touching each other. It's like the weakest that it's at. Like they just technology isn't ready for that yet. I do like when he throws the face thing against the the thing, and
Yes.
it's got like Jake Busey's face on it.
Yeah, it's not a great special effect by
No.
today's standard, but it's a really fun idea.
Yeah.
It is very cartoony. It's very, again, this like Warner Brothers slapsticky thing. And you see his face and he's kind of like communicating. He's like sliding down the grave. I love that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the physicality of it is great. And although it, you know, it doesn't look terrific, it's such a fun idea.
Yeah.
It suits the character so perfectly. We finally actually get some Jake Busey.
Yeah.
You know, where I've been waiting for him the whole time in some sense. The Reaper is cool, but like Johnny Bartlett is a pretty great villain in and of it himself.
I agree. Totally.
It's nice to actually get him involved in the action late in the game here. And I love that when he like splatters the face.
Yeah.
He's just sort of sliding down the grave and like talking shit. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, and I like that effect too when, you know, he's about to like kill him with the scythe, like Frank's about, and like he gets like, you know, shocked back to life.
Yeah.
I like how it, like, you know, he gets the one shock and then the second shock like throws him, you know, back. I thought that was a really, you know, fun effect. And yeah, now we've got Jake Busey just looking like Jake Busey as a ghost, which I like. Which, to be honest with you, it's creepier than the death thing anyway. But good. And then of course, you know, we get the kind of resolution now of like the idea of who is really behind all of this. You know, obviously we know Johnny is behind it. And then quickly we learn that, you know, of course, Patricia is also behind it. And I like that, like, she's been really doing a good job, like, holding it together, seeming like she's, like, you know, this put upon weak girl. But at this point, she just, even though she's kind of trying to still keep this, like, veneer up of, like, oh, I'm just, you know, this innocent girl, she is such weirdly, grossly horny for this killer ghost that she's just acting so weird, you know, during the whole thing where she's like talking to her in the house and she's like kind of like touching like this invisible person or whatever. We get like really some of our only blood in the movie, really, when she goes up to get the mom, and the mom is, you know, been stabbed to death by Patricia. So
yeah, that scene works pretty well.
Yeah.
Again, reminds me a lot of Dead Alive.
Yeah, for sure, yes, 100%. But I like this scene too. Like, you know, it's like this is a little more like, you know, straight up like just crazy person scene. Like there's no ghost there. I mean, the ghost comes in a little bit later, but it's really just the threat is really this woman with the gun and the knife. And I like
Dee Wallace is great in this
She's
movie.
awesome in this movie. Yeah, absolutely. She rules in this movie. And that actress they found to play young her, great job, guys.
Yeah,
she looks
absolutely.
exactly like her.
Yep.
Yeah, Dee Wallace is great in this movie, and not a part, again, a kind of part you usually would see her in, right? Especially in this era. This is like mom.
No,
era.
like she's so closely associated with horror, but she never plays like that kind of character,
Exactly,
right? She's the mom, right? She's the you know, the innocent, the Howling, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Howling, Cujo. Yeah, she's great in this movie, and you know, we get this sort of like MacGuffin with the ashes, right? Like we get the cool. I like the painting thing is cool when he comes out of the painting.
Yeah.
And I think that effect works nicely, and how he kind of like, you know, loses like this physical form, so he has to go back into like the ashes like container or whatever. And
we think that that's her father's ashes, but it's his ashes.
Yeah,
you know, she was forced to have her dead father's ashes in there to like keep her in line, but no, this is just her dead serial killer boyfriend.
Yeah. And
it's a pretty disturbing idea. But
yes,
again,
it's a very disturbing idea. So much of this movie, as we've said, is a really disturbing ideas that have like this sort of like zany cartoon thing placed on top of them.
You could see a much more serious, much darker tone version of this. And I don't know that I necessarily want that. Like I like the way it's able to sort of pull off, as I said before, the goofy tone with this like real macabre kind of thing going on alongside it.
Yeah. So Jackson talked about in the commentary how this idea of the ashes wasn't really in the original script. It was something that came in very late, which was originally it was just them being chased into the hospital. And, you know, he was like, but, you know, Fran came up with this idea for it to be the ashes because...
Oh, they have to consecrate the ashes. Yeah. So
it's better for them to have something active that they're trying to do than them
Lucy
just
says
running
there's
away.
A chapel. The closest chapel is the one in the hospital. That's a nice idea. Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. And this hospital scene, he talks about how, like, before they shot it, like, him and Michael J. Fox and Fran, and I forgot who else said, like, they kind of met, like, on their off day and kind of, like, figured out all together, like, these kind of, like, situations, like, these vignettes that were going to happen in the hospital and how they were going to happen. Like, the elevator thing, he's like, it wasn't originally in the script, but we were looking around the area and we found the elevator. And I'm like, well, this might be a fun place to have, like, a dramatic, you know, scene happen. And this scene here and, like, this thing here and, like, the thing with the ashes, like the statue falling and the ashes flying in the air. He was like, that was Michael's idea. That was like something he just like came up with. He was like,
Nice.
you know,
Like that.
and I just love that this is very collaborative experience, right? Where he like I said at the beginning, where it's like, no, these people have good ideas. Let's do all the good ideas. Like we don't have to just have to be our ideas that are, and that what makes them good. You know, I like
this
that
scene
about it.
absolutely rules.
Yeah.
You know, the past and the present, and we're seeing the massacre.
Mhm.
Like, I forgot how much of it we actually see
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this, and we're kind of going back and forth between that and this chase, this kind of ticking clock thing. I mean,
Mhm.
it's all just really, really well constructed. It's so
Yeah.
compelling. It's so, I mean, again, this movie could have just been fun and funny, and instead, we're going to give you this amazing action sequence where
Yeah.
we're doing all these different things. We're cutting back and forth. It is really high degree of difficulty.
Yeah, high degree of difficulty. High degree of difficulty.
If Joe Wright is handsomely mounted, Peter
Yep.
Jackson is high degree of difficulty.
Absolutely. And I really like the scene where he's underneath the bed and she's coming into the room with a shotgun, and that like way it cuts between like the current day and the past. Like there's that one time where she like sort of like steps in front of the bed and like points the gun at the bed, and then it like match cuts to the past where she's young her is shooting the person in the bed. I really like that stuff. Or like this like concept that he's like doesn't know that the modern version of her is even in the room, right? Because he's so out of it, like experiencing this thing that happened. You know, I liked that a lot, and I liked really like how it's all set up. And like this is where the Dammers gets his head shot off, which is a really fun, like memorable thing.
Well, it's one of those great confrontations where there's two people pointing guns and somebody in the middle just like whoop, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he falls to the floor, and then like this ending right before like the kind of like the finale of the movie. This is like I think the most time where he kind of really turns up the like actual kind of disturbing horror parts of it, where he kind of takes away all of the Looney Tunes stuff. And he's like, these are just two psychotic people who are going to kill you in some really terrible way. Like that is just all it is. There's no longer any like
where they're like hyping each other up for murders. There's a, like it's kind of a sex scene where she like stabs him a bunch of times, and he's like, "Yeah, it feels good." You know,
yeah.
Like S&M kind of thing. It is, yeah. They're earning the R rating here, I think.
Yeah. It's weird, and difficult in that moment for sure. And then like how do we feel about the like hell tunnel thing?
Oh man, it's such a mid '90s, late '90s CGI hell. It reminded me of Spawn. Remember the Spawn?
It looks like a Korn music video.
There you go. Yeah, sure. I think it's a fun idea.
Yeah.
This is when the movie. So yeah, we get the most sort of grounded horror stuff before this, and then we're literally there is an afterlife, there is a heaven. They go to heaven. Frank actually goes to heaven for a little while. And then we see hell, this hell beast that swallows the two villains, and I mean. I like it, actually. I think in the context of this movie, even now, it's obviously the effects are kind of showing their age.
Yeah, of course.
But because the rest of this is so goofy and so over the top, I don't mind it. And, the fact that it's this giant thing that like swallows them and then goes back down.
Yeah.
If it was,
I like when the thing has come through his eyes, like the little like thing has come through his eyes. I think the concept of it, absolutely.
Let's kind of just like take this to the highest level we possibly can and go crazy with it, and it's that fun, like it's like a Pink Floyd The Wall kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Like this now, you could just buy off the rack better assets, from like the Unity store or whatever,
and it would look amazing, but it wouldn't have quite the personality. Of
no,
this,
no, definitely not. What strikes me about listening to all these people, and you hear these people talk in the documentary or interviews about this movie, all of them are just like, man, I'm so upset that this isn't one of the movies that I made that was like big. Like I would trade other movies that I was in that were big for this movie to be big. Like that is like what a lot of them would say. And it's just funny. It just seems like everyone had like a great time doing it. Everyone was really into it, and you can feel it like in the movie. You can feel everyone is like super invested in what's going on in the movie. And then we get the fun like sort of nice ending with her like pretending to be death or whatever. We know that Dahmer's is like sticking with the sheriff, is like haunting the sheriff or whatever.
Guardian angel.
His guardian angel. Yeah. I like all that stuff.
And then, of course, because this is a 90s movie, we get a not very good cover of Don't Fear the Reaper at the end.
We have a couple. I think there's Don't Fear the Reaper, and there's one other song in this movie that are both on the Scream soundtrack as well.
Superstar?
Is it Superstar?
The Carpenters cover.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Sonic Youth. Yeah, that one's great.
Yeah, that cover, Sonic Youth cover, is great of that.
Yeah, I really
song.
like that.
Yeah. But actually, no, that's on the "I Know What You Did Last Summer" soundtrack.
No, that's Summer Breeze, right?
They're both on there.
That's typo negative Summer
They're
Breeze.
both on there, I believe. I believe they're both on there.
I'm sure you did too.
I did too. I had all those horror soundtracks for sure. Those like teen horror movies. They're good soundtracks for the most part too.
They are, yeah. Well, I did a screening of Scream last fall and listened to the whole thing and played it, before we got started. And
I've listened to Red Right Hand so many times.
That was on the X-Files soundtrack of songs that weren't actually in the X-Files.
That's so funny.
Like X-Files inspired CD, and being the X-Files fan that I was, like, I gotta own that.
Yeah. So yeah, Don't Fear the Reaper. It's a New Zealand band. I forgot what Peter Jackson says the name of the band.
Mutton Birds, I think.
Mutton Birds. Yeah. He goes, I wanted it to be a New Zealand band. Basically, is what he said. And he makes a joke about Jake Busey in that scene where where he's kind of like talking to the Dee Wallace character, and Lucy doesn't know that he's there, right? Obviously, because he's a ghost, and they're talking about all like the different serial killers and everything like that. And he goes like, "Oh, but the American should really have the record or whatever." And Peter Jackson's like, "That's just us, making fun of Americans because they are so obsessed with serial killers for some reason." Yeah. Basically,
there's a lot of serial killer talk in this movie. Yeah, Starkweather and the Russian cannibal guy.
The Russian cannibal guy.
But we forgot to mention there is a very cliched but kind of well done moment here where Frank is in heaven. They're like, no, it's not actually your time. He sees his wife, and she says, "Go be happy." Be with Lucy. And
yeah.
I don't know, but like in this movie, I think it works. I hate those scenes generally, but here, especially because it is finally this like quiet, sweet moment after like just all the craziness that we've seen up to that point, I don't mind it so much.
Yeah, Jackson talks about that scene. He goes, we originally shot it, the wife wasn't in the scene. It was just the two ghosts and him. And when we showed it to like audiences, they were all like, we would really like some sort of like resolution to like the wife thing or whatever.
Before this nice picnic scene with the new love. Sure.
So they went and like brought that actress in and just shot her like separately. And he goes, the nice thing was Michael's performance just kind of worked with it, even though she wasn't there, because he was kind of playing like, oh, I could get to see her maybe, so like you get that filled in. But he's like, we shot this separately, and I was like, you don't say, Peter. I could definitely tell because you never shot with both of them in it. If you had planned this out, you definitely would have had a scene where they like are close to one another physically.
They're in heaven. They don't need to be.
I know, but it's like a very locked off shot.
They're close together metaphysically.
Yeah, it's a very locked off, like close up shot of her, and that's it. But again, really enjoyed this movie. I think it holds up really well.
I was very surprised. The reviews of this were much more mixed than I thought they would be.
Yeah.
This movie feels like it's got so much creativity, and Roger Ebert was the one that he hated this movie. This is a 1 star from him, which I was reading a lot of Roger Ebert at the time when this came out. He
didn't he also dislike Heavenly Creatures? Wasn't he also one of the crew critics who disliked Heavenly Creatures?
No, I thought he really liked Heavenly
Creatures. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Or maybe it was Brain Dead or Dead Alive that he didn't like.
He didn't like Dead Alive. I mean, I understand what he's saying about the excesses of this, and he says it's a movie about everything, and I'd rather have it be a movie about nothing. His quote about this is something like, "Last year I watched a 9-hour documentary about Mongolian yak herders, and I'd rather watch that again than watch the Frighteners again." Like, it's just too much, too antic, too much hyperness, and I don't know, like.
But it's one of those things, though. I will say this in his defense is like, he's not wrong, right? That it's crazy hyper and over the top.
What's great about it,
right? But what I like about good reviewers, and this is Roger Ebert, obviously one of the legends, one of the best, right? One of the best people who ever wrote about movies, is you can read that review, and if you know your own personality and your own taste, you can go, well, but I like stuff that's like this, so maybe I will like this. A negative or positive review, if well written, should inform you in the same way in a lot of ways, because you can read a glowing review of something and be like, they love this movie, but all the stuff they're saying they love about this movie, I hate about movies. So like, I probably won't like this movie,
And Roger Ebert is actually very, he praises a lot of things that Jackson does here and the special effects and everything. I mean, it's not just this movie is a piece of shit. It's just, I really didn't like this. And I don't know. I find that attitude a little bit dismissive. Because there is, like, you can't say that this movie is not full of creativity, is not full of originality, does not at least try to have some emotional subtext about it. And I don't know, he's very, I think dismissive is the way
I mean,
to
he could be very
describe it.
dismissive of movies at times.
He
Movies he
can be.
doesn't
I
like,
know.
he could be very dismissive of. He was not what you would call
He's not,
critic
but
who
like
minced his words.
he's the guy who'll give 3 stars to something that everybody else thinks is like the worst piece of shit ever.
Yeah, of
and
course.
you know, will often make a pretty good case for it. And it's
Yeah.
like, if you could make a case for Geely, then you could probably make a case for the Frighteners, right?
Yeah, except I just think it's one of the things where this definitely feels like a movie he would not like. You know, knowing, having watched that show for years.
Siskel didn't like it either.
Doesn't surprise me either. Oh man, I loved watching that show though.
Me
I just
too.
love that they would be like, one would say they didn't like it, or oh, this movie was great, and one would be like, you are insane. I just love that they would talk to each other like that.
Well, it's a legacy that we will never, but we can always aspire to live up to.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, 100%. And they did it in like 3 minutes, which like it's 3 hours to do. So, that's why they were the best of the best.
They sure were.
Yeah, love this movie.
Me too.
I think it's one of a kind, and I think it's just one of those things where when you see something like this, even if you don't like everything about it, the amount of creativity on display is truly staggering. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, even to this day, there are still things in this movie that I've never seen done again, and we've seen this through all of his movies, right? We could say this about all of his movies for the most part, even the ones we don't like Meet the Feebles, but the guy just, he, up to this point at least, does not seem to care what other people have considered to be the thing that works. You know what I mean? He just does what he thinks is working at
some sense within the studio system, although he and Zemeckis got final cut on this. Like that was agreed to before they even started working on it. And, as you said before, Zemeckis kind of had the pull for that.
Yeah.
Peter Jackson is still kind of a newbie at this point.
Yes.
Like, he's got 2 indie films that were pretty well regarded, or at least, kind of made his name for himself. But, he is in control here in a lot of ways. And he is, as he said, back with Meet the Feebles, he's making the movies that he wants to make. He's making the movies that he wants to see. And it's very obvious throughout here.
Yeah.
There are safer choices everywhere. Like, every scene in this movie could be done in a blander, safer, more studio friendly, more audience friendly kind of way. And it's like, nope, we're going to be goofy. We're going to crash this car through everything we can possibly crash it through. We are going to have the third act be like 45 minutes long. And, either you're along for the ride or you're not. And unfortunately, a lot of people weren't. I keep comparing this to like such popular movies, and I feel like if you like Beetlejuice, you gotta like the Frighteners. If you like Ghostbusters, you gotta like the Frighteners.
Yeah.
It is, it's right in that wheelhouse. It's doing kind of a very similar thing in an interesting way, where it's not just like, this is a rip. What was it's called Evolution, the one where it's like Ghostbusters with aliens instead of ghosts. That was very obviously what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
This one, if it's drawing on that, it's drawing on that in a way where it's like, hey, remember that thing you liked? Well, here's like a spin on it, and I really like that about it.
And let's not forgo to give credit to the fact that this movie partially exists because Robert Zemeckis is a dang ass freak, and he really is. Even though he's made some of the most popular mainstream movies in history, guy likes weird shit. And
sure, Back to the Future is a weird movie.
Yes, it's a weird ass movie, but I'm just, guy loves weird horror stuff too. That's why he did Tales from the Crypt. He's just, he is a guy like that, right? He and without him, this movie probably isn't the movie it is. It probably is, a lot more cut down. It's a lot more, it's different. There's a lot more of studio interference. And he definitely protected Jackson. I'm sure Jackson, who coming off an Oscar nomination, probably had a lot of people wanting him to do something, in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So there probably was a little bit of he had a little bit of negotiating power in that way. But I don't think without Zemeckis, you get what this movie is.
But you could also see Jackson doing this as a very stripped down, low budget, Dead Alive type thing is more splattery, more trauma-esque. There's a version of it that's like that too. And I actually like that he's at least trying to speak to the mainstream audience here. Because
it fits into that milieu of movies you're talking about, and I think that's what he wanted to do, right? He wanted to make a Beetlejuice or a Ghostbusters or whatever, one of those type of movies, I think. So yeah, one of my favorites from when I was a kid, still really like it. This movie cost $26 million to make. We're not going to say any number that low for the rest of the time we talk about this guy's movies. I don't think there'll be another movie that doesn't have a 1 in front of the budget.
True.
There isn't a triple digit budget.
We're in triple digits.
Yeah, for sure. From now on, I'm pretty sure.
King Kong's a small movie, right?
King Kong's a little movie. I don't know how much the Lovely Bones cost. I'm sure it was expensive, but I don't know how much it cost.
I feel like it didn't have to be, but he made it. He found a way to make that movie expensive.
Yeah.
Not a good way, but
Yeah,
we'll get to
absolutely. 100%. But we'll get there when we get there. Next time, we're going to talk about The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Here we are. Here we go.
Here we go. The things to talk about. Such a big movie. It will, up to this point, obviously the most influential, biggest movie we'll have talked about up to this point. And so it's new territory for us, but I'm excited to tackle it and get into it. We're going to watch the extended editions for the review for sure. Just keep following on the Peter Jackson mold of watching the longest possible version of whatever movie he made. So I'll be watching that, and then I'm going to watch a ton of special features and stuff like that just so we can have a really nice, in-depth conversation.
Me too, because I've always meant to, and I've owned those DVDs for like 20 years and still have not
I'm jealous of you, to be honest with you.
dive.
You're watching it for the first time. That's really cool, watching those features for the first time.
I've seen the movie.
No, I mean the features, though. Like, the features are, you're going to learn a lot about the making of that.
Love that stuff, as we were saying.
A lot about the stuff I'm really interested to listen to again is the stuff at the very beginning where he talks about how the movie got like greenlit and how he got the movie the go to him for him to make the movie, basically. Really fascinating story considering his career up until that point. But yeah, we'll talk about that next time. But until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
And thank you to everybody who's watching or listening. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.